OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
All right, Monday morning, we are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and looking forward to a pretty interesting weekend, a week of sport and a brilliant weekend to look back on as well. As ever, let's hear from you if you're a golf fan and you're astonished by Eoin McIlroy's attack last night in the wee hours on Phil Mickelson, which we'll bring you details of, but it is like sensational. It is like one of the best bits of a professional sports person, talking about another professional sports person, that you're ever going to see. Rory McIlroy is lit. We'll bring you the details of that a little bit later on. Kerry, absolutely sensational. Oisin McConville asking if they can do it in a wet night in Stoke, saying Inishkeen, is that next week? You're pretty confident they will be able to.
It's unfortunate. I literally made that comparison yesterday, comparing it to Turf Moor or the Britannia. It is.
Did you?
Yeah, it is.
On air? In public? In the WhatsApp group.
In private.
Kerry Mafia WhatsApp group.
Clearly Oisin McConville's got an in.
Yeah, I mean, look, all these numbers with the...
Or else it's just a very easy comparison to make. It's the most...
Great minds think alike is the one you're looking for.
It is the most National League of National League settings, isn't it? In a scheme, so that beckons to them at the weekend. But the one that I think everybody's looking forward to is the Mayo game, right? I think people are looking forward to seeing Kerry and Mayo go toe to toe in Tralee in a game that nobody's won at home, a fixture that nobody's won at home in like a decade.
Oh really?
So
right.
The expectation is that's the weekend where a possible preview of the league final. Armagh will have something to say about that, no doubt, over the next few weeks. But it's going to be a very, very interesting few weeks.
We'll talk about all this with Anthony Moyles a little bit later on. Evan Ferguson made his debut for Brighton in the Premier League. He made his Premier League debut, came off the bench 69 minutes in. Nice all round. He's going to remember that forever now. They obviously get hammered, and afterwards the main talking point is a row between Shane Duffy, the goalkeeper, his old goalkeeper, and Potter's like, we weren't our best selves today. It was like, wow, it's very, very calm, very new age management speak, and also correct. They weren't their best selves, but Evan Ferguson was his best self. Comes off the bench to become the third youngest Irish Premier League debutant of all time. Quizmaster, riddle me this.
Yeah.
1 and 2.
I saw this. I can't remember.
Any rough idea?
I can't remember.
Give me again. No, look at this.
No, it's not in the piece that I was reading. I am.
How the turntables have.
How the turntables are. It's 7:32 on a Monday morning.
Come on. It's fucking 9.
Brighton and Hove Albion were not their best selves on Saturday afternoon. I would dare say that at 7:32.
We're live on air. You're supposed to be your best self. I was out last night, so there was another rearranged gig.
Who was the youngest Irish? Like, I mean,
who's in the running in your head?
But I mean,
trying to think of any Irish players.
The obvious ones would be like Robbie Keane when he comes in as a fresh-faced child, but not playing in the. He's one of the two.
He is not one of the two.
Not one of the two.
I think everybody would have gone for Robbie Keane, but actually Robbie came through when
the
Wolves were in the first division. Started there as a 17-year-old.
Oh, Richard Dunn.
Richard Dunn
is one.
He is the second.
And Richard Dunn, and who is the other? Oh, it's not.
What position have we been best at ever in world football? Where have we always had a slew of players? If you think of us like we create the good body type for the number 6s and number 7s. Number 7s really in the world.
Well, fullbacks are our thing.
Fullbacks. Stephen Carr, well done.
Got there eventually. Is he 7:33 now?
There you go.
So there you go.
We wasted a full minute. Yeah. Congratulations, Evan Ferguson. You're behind those two. The other thing is Shane Long comes off the bench and scores. Like, that's... everybody assumed he would be released or let go or whatever, but afterwards Hassan Hootle is saying, no, this guy's a model professional. He is brilliant around the dressing room. He's exactly what you want, and maybe that goal has earned him an extra year on his contract, which is an extra couple of million. It's like, not bad.
Riddle me this, Quizmaster. Who is he behind when it comes to the all-time Premier League Irish goal scoring?
Do you know the answer?
Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? I mean, the two top.
Is he second?
He's third, but he's only 3 goals behind second place now.
Okay, so it's Robbie. Premier League goal scorers, Niall Quinn.
Yeah, copy and paste from the Republic of Ireland, so all time. Yeah, he's 3 behind Niall Quinn at this point. So does he get to 59? He's on 56 at the moment. You could see it happening if he does get that extra deal, and Hassan Hootle is still manager next season, because, as you say, he clearly sees Shane Long as somebody who's been a really positive influence around the dressing room, somebody that he's kept at the club. I know, obviously, he he did let him go out and kind of spread his wings last season a little bit. But I would have expected the move to Bournemouth to have been more of a permanent thing last summer, or at least a stepping stone away from the club, but it didn't happen, and he's back and he's scoring goals. Evan Ferguson was 1 year old, by the way, when Shane Long made his move to Reading.
Was he?
So this is the spectrum we're talking about.
It's hard not to get too excited about Evan Ferguson coming through, because we're desperate for somebody in that position. At the weekend for the MK Dons, we did have the last version of Evan Ferguson scoring, and I think maybe also creating a chance as well. So we definitely need some players coming through. We had a centre back play the full game, make his full debut for Derby, who win with a 95th minute winner, and are they going to be safe? Well, do we think?
The way things are going at the moment, like Derby County is one of the greatest stories in world sport right now. Like, I know you've been saying it for a while, but it's the way things have been developing at the moment. Like a 92nd minute winner at the weekend. It seems that Derby County just don't do things the easy way, even within the context of these games at the moment. And there's a huge Irish interest in what they're doing. Obviously, you've got Aaron Cashion coming in and plays at centre back. Saw the team sheet, looked at him on Wikipedia. He's a former Republic of Ireland under 18. And has been obviously capped for Ireland at that level. And you've been looking at him on Instagram just to make
on
sure
Instagram,
that
he was like, he's committed loyalty to the Republic of Ireland.
Right.
Somebody was like, oh, you can play for England. No, I'm the reverse Declan Rice. So
okay, well, that's
Declan Rice did kiss the badge is the only thing. So like, put him in the squad, give him some minutes.
I mean, I'll be happy if Cashion doesn't kiss the badge, but gives us 150 caps and 40 goals from centre back, or midfield.
Well, that's the thing. Like, so he's on Google. It says he's a midfielder. They've obviously picked him centre back, so maybe they've changed him into a centre back, and that's what he's going to be from now on. But like, it's a ball playing, stepping into midfield, 18-year-old centre back.
Yeah.
Which I mean, if we turn him into a reverse Paul McGrath, where he plays midfield for 6 or 8 years of his career, would be happy with that too.
100%. So you had him starting at centre back. You'd obviously Festy and Jason Knight as well.
Yeah.
And they're scoring 92nd minute winners after a massive points deduction under Wayne Rooney and trying their best to claw their way back into the safety zone in this division.
Yeah.
It's appointment viewing at this point every week, isn't it?
It was a pretty interesting weekend for the Irish kids, and there's more speculation. Justin Ferzaj was linked at the weekend with Hamburg, was it? He's on trial there. Am I mixing this up?
I'm not sure.
Somebody else.
But just to go back very quickly before we move on to the point you made about Evan Ferguson and seeing a kid come through, like, I think the Premier League has been such a difficult place to break through in over the last couple of years that there's been this expectation that somebody like I don't know who's the last great player to break through from an Irish perspective. Maybe someone like Matt Doherty in his age profile, where he's kind of like gone to England at a certain age, has established himself in a team that get promoted and has grinded it out to become a Premier League regular. And then all of a sudden we have a 17-year-old who just makes a debut and becomes like the third youngest Irishman of all time, making it seem a lot easier than it really is, which hopefully is a sign that the quality coming through in Irish football is just better than it was.
Yeah, it was Paul Rowan in yesterday's Sunday Times who was reporting that Justin Ferzaj of Rovers is on trial at Hamburg.
Right.
And he's part of that under-17 group who've come through. He's also Irish-Albanian, like Rocco Vata and Kevin Zeffy. So again, I think a lot of the young players coming through, there's going to be an opportunity for them to play for multiple different countries. It's something we're going to get used to, and we better seduce them to play for us, because that's our future.
Absolutely.
Right. 7:38. We're a bit late to get into this, but we're going to get into the performance rankings in 1 second. That's what's coming next. Mark Lawrenson is going to join us at 8:10. A wild weekend in the Premier League, particularly for those Liverpool fans who are just shooing Steven Gerrard in to be the next manager of Liverpool. We'll talk about that with Laro, 8:10. Sports pages at 8:30, including a clip, I think, of Davy Fitzgerald on the sideline, where he's going to be low key. Not going to be major. Definitely not going to overshadow events on the field. That's coming your way a little bit later on. Anthony Moyles is going to join us at 8:40 to talk about the weekend's Gaelic football. Gemma Begley at 9 o'clock of the GPA talking about the motion heading to Congress this week, where essentially Congress will, as a body, recognise the move towards unifying the LGFA, the Camogie Association, and the GAA finally for quantum leap forward for equality, you would hope. Alan Quinlan's going to join us at 9:10, and then the Sunday papers at 9:30. Some big stories in the papers yesterday. We'll deal with that for you a little bit later on in the show. Get in touch. Drop a comment on the YouTube stream. You can tweet us at Off The Ball AM, or of course you can always text the show on 0879 180 180. But at 7:40, it's time for the performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Boom. Right. This is one of those weeks where actually there was loads of different ways to get stuff in here. So, how have you gone about this?
Well, we're going to start with what happened at Croke Park on Saturday night. As much as I think Mayo probably deserved to be in the green this morning, there are other candidates that get into the green. So to talk about this game, we're going at this from the negative angle, which is not any longer a surprising angle. I do think that there is this sort of feeling around Dublin football, who are in the red, by the way, that there is something coming from Dublin, that there was possibly a big win coming from them on Saturday night. Like even when we were doing our predictions on Friday morning, I think we were split down the middle, 2 for Mayo, 2 for Dublin.
Who was picking it up?
Not me.
Right. There was just no evidence. There was no sign of a spark. There was nothing. Everything that they were doing was telegraphed. And it's not like you can just change that quickly. Now, having said that, we had Colin Boyle on the show on Friday. And I was asking him, is there a world where you can see Dublin losing all the games? Maybe they pick up a point in Newbridge or 2 points in Newbridge, but they still go down. And then they can come back in the summer. And actually what's happened here is that they're horsing through players to see who their championship squad is going to be. They'll get several players back who can start on the bench or start games for them if they need to, and slowly work their way in April and early May to a point where, you know, by the middle of June, they're one of the top 2 teams in the country. It's like, very difficult to see that. Very difficult to see how you can just catapult from bad form into good form. I still think there's a world where that can happen, where they can get relegated here and it actually has no bearing on what's coming in the summer because of the transition that they're going through and the amount of players who they need to give some game time to and the patterns of play. I still think there is a world where that happens. It's less likely, given the speed at which the championship hurtles towards us, but the Leinster Championship not looking pretty hot, is it? No,
and like there's every chance that Dublin will be the best placed Leinster team in the National League at the end of all of this. Still a very strong chance that Dublin don't get relegated. Like it's not unimaginable to think that Mayo, Kerry and Armagh will be the top 3 teams in Division 1 at the end of all of this. They are the 3 teams that Dublin have played already. Arguably they've played their 3 toughest games. Getting them out of Croke Park may actually benefit them. I mean, if you had to pick a half of football that was their best so far, would you say maybe the second half in Tralee was their best so far? A half out of 6 that wasn't played in Croke Park.
The game's already over though.
Yeah, like there was
it's hard to tell.
Definitely more to fight for in the Armagh Mayo games for sure. But I just wonder if like Newbridge is actually going to suit Dublin a little bit over the course of that match, and being on the road may not be a bad thing for them. And also the quality of opposition, as I say, may not be what it was in the first 3 games. So I still think that Dublin...
The trouble here is that we're both so scarred by Dublin beating us in our respective counties at various stages that we've seen them be zombies in the past and come back. What is undead will never die.
Yeah, well, obviously this is vastly different. They would be winning games where they were playing poorly in the past, and now that the players are of a lower quality, when they're playing poorly, they're getting beaten because...
Yeah, I do. Definitely, there's a narrative abroad that, it was all Jim Gavin who fixed everything. That was like, no, it was Dermot Connolly and Paul Flynn and Bernard Brogan in their absolute peak. It was Michael Darragh Macaulay in his peak. The players that they had were all-time great players. It's like people always, what would Brian Cody do if he was in charge of a lesser county? Well, we're seeing what he would do now. He would struggle the way everybody struggles. Gaelic games, because there's no transfer market, is entirely dependent on the quality of players that you have. Management is definitely important, but even the best managers take absolutely ages to get their players to do stuff. Like if you look at, I think Geezer is one of the best managers in the country, right? What he did with Kildare, but it took him ages to get to the point where they were conditioned the way he wanted them to be. It's the same with this crop of Armagh players. And again, it's the age profile of those Armagh players as they're finally reaching their full flush of what it is to do. Jim Gavin came in and was obviously a genius at organisation and surrounding himself with great coaches and pushed the game further than it could go. But like, were Mayo that far away from them? Is James Horan is considered a failure because he didn't beat the greatest team of all time. The narrative is that if Gavin was still in charge, the Dubs would still be the team they were, without all of the All-Ireland medals that they lost. And I don't think that's the case. I think that Dessie Farrell's used 50 players, it says in the Examiner this morning.
I think that it would be a better version than they are of themselves. I do think that Jim Gavin is possibly the greatest Gaelic football manager of all time. I think it's very hard to argue against that.
So Brian Cody was.
Yeah.
But nobody's making that case anymore because of what's happened with Cody since they're all like, oh, that was just the players.
There's also probably a decline when it comes to a manager, just like there are with players. Like there are peaks to a manager's career where you're ahead of the curve, and maybe in time it will just come to be that Jim Gavin is one of the best managers of all time rather than the best manager of all time.
I think that's it. But Horan didn't have the same group of players. He looked to his bench and was like, oh Jesus, I don't have 5 All-Stars to come off my bench today. Until the very end, when obviously the players were at like 36, 35.
Yeah, and I think that
I'm just saying, Desi's taken all the flack for the retirement of all those players or the unavailability of all those players. But if you put all those players back in the team, things would be pretty easy.
That's a huge factor.
There'd be cohesiveness because they had 10 years of playing together.
And we can't completely write off the 2020 All-Ireland as well, that Dessie Farrell did manage to keep everything together.
No one gives zero credit for that.
In fact, it's possibly even used as a stick to beat him with. It's
exactly.
like, oh, you rode the Jim Gavin's horse, and that was it. That's how you got it. Like, I do think it's an interesting point you make about James Horan, and like the second coming of Horan has.
So was he the second best manager of all time then? Because he drove the best manager of all time to beat his team, like in games that were actually 50-50, where they end up with the ball and the free kick in the last second.
I don't know. Like, I mean,
silly stuff about winning teams win is like, that's not really what happens. Like, a lot of very important decisions go your way in matches.
Yeah, like and Philly's column on Saturday was very interesting because I actually think that there was a lot of people who were quite sore after reading it, I suspect. But
the Mayo people.
Yeah, but that's because there was a lot of home truths in what he said. But I do think that there is a key difference in the eras of Mayo that he's describing. That I do think the second coming of Horan has changed. And I know that that's probably a stupid thing to say about Mayo because
they lost again last
year. And what will happen this year if they get to an All-Ireland final?
The Dubs only beat them that year and Mayo scored 2 own goals. You're telling me that Dublin were this kind of automatic, like I think we sit there and we go, oh, you won, you lost, you're a winner, you're a loser.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Well, that's not what happens.
No, but that's what I'm trying to say. I think
bad Mayo culture that scored the 2 own goals. It's a complete random fluke.
No, well, I do think
it's a random fluke.
I don't think that it was a bad Mayo culture that lost last year, for example. I think it was Cillian O'Connor getting injured eventually caught up with them in an All-Ireland final, for example.
No. They're losers. They're celebrity losers, and that's it, Eoin.
Yeah.
And if you look for anything beyond that, you're a weirdo.
Well, yeah, I did the celebrity losers thing was obviously Joe Broddy's line, and I do think that...
But everybody believes it. Well, it has become shorthand.
I do think, though, that, I mean, when you read Philly on Saturday, he didn't, resort to calling Mayo celebrity losers. He doesn't, though. I actually don't think that. I actually came away from reading that piece that this is an excellent column, and there's actually a lot of what he's saying here that's... And not excellent in the headline grabbing. I mean, excellent there's a lot here that he's giving us why.
Everybody's tuning in for that every week now.
100%. But I actually thought that there was actually decent enough reasons, and honest reasons why he thought that Mayo have come up short over the last little while, rather than being like, they're celebrity losers, they're never going to win one. I really think that it was obviously it was honestly held beliefs from Philly in that column, but I actually kind of came away with a bit of a greater understanding. I just think that what he was saying about Mayo, I think actually behind the scenes something has changed in Mayo over the last little while. Just from what they're saying publicly, there is more. James Horan is more like Jim Gavin now than he was in his first coming. I think is what I'm getting off that. And I thought they were going to win the All-Ireland last year, and they didn't. Anyway, that's I guess bit of deja vu. Back to Dublin, they were not good on Saturday night. There was someone like Ross McGarry is a shining light for them in a position that they needed a shining light in, and it's going to be a very, very interesting few weeks. As somebody from Kildare, you must be licking your chops at the thoughts of Dublin coming to Newbridge. But I do think
maybe if we got over the line against Tyrone from a winning position, there's just a little bit of game smarts, hard to see out a game against that Tyrone team wasn't the Tyrone team that won the All-Ireland. Obviously they had the 4 red cards and none of those players were available, and they had some injuries as well, so it's right there for you to go and win that game, and they didn't do it, so that was disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Clear signs of progress from what they're trying to do. There's a discernible style and a pattern of play, but ball gets dropped into Niall Morgan's hands. It's actually the winning and losing in the game. There's just been a brilliant block on McCurry. He throws a shimmy and then gets blocked down, and Kildare go up the field, and it's end-to-end stuff. It's like a basketball game. It's brilliant to watch in the conditions. they dropped the ball into Morgan's hands. It's a tiny split second of relaxation, and the ball's in the back of the net 8 seconds later. Like, that's big boy football. You get your big boy pants on, and it didn't work. They so that's the type of thing that you have to experience, and that's why the squad coming through now, that's why staying in Division 1 is like far more important than what happened in the Championship this year. I don't think they're going to be able to do it at this stage. I think that was their opportunity to get those 2 points on the board and to keep rolling, but
it does feel like there's expectation on this Dublin fixture, though. It really does, as if
well, there's a chance there.
There's that, and also the home factor, which you wouldn't get in Championship.
There's many years of hurt that are welling up inside, and there's an opportunity for them to take it out. But I'm as I said, what is undead will never die. Like, the fact that Dublin do have 50 players to choose from suggests that they have a bunch of players who are at the same level, which is a way bigger number than most other counties, which is still at, like, if the funnel can be, it might take a little bit longer now because there's so few opportunities for players coming through in recent seasons. If that funnel, if there's a clog in the funnel but the right players rise to the top over the next 2 months, like, we don't know how good those players are yet. No, we haven't seen them.
Like, I mean, the chances are that a few of those players over the course of the next little while will come good, and that'll lead to Dublin winning more All-Ireland. I don't think anybody's saying that this is going to be Dublin now wandering through the wilderness for a long, long time. It is for the next little while, and like it's interesting when we think about these sort of potentially these chaos years that we're entering in Gaelic football in general, with regards to unpredictability for All-Ireland champions. This could either be the 90s, where we've got like a decade of like 8 different All-Ireland winners, or it could be a brief pause like we had in 2010, 2011, 2012, where, in football, where you have like, well, it was chaos years in both goals in the 90s, where you have like Cork and Donegal picking up All-Ireland's, granted, with great teams, and Dublin getting one in the middle. And then out of that just grew this absolute machine in Dublin. We don't know, something similar could happen, or we could be entering 10 years of madness, where if we as I say, you could have half a dozen to 10 counties picking up All-Irelands.
I don't know if you heard any of the Saturday panel on Saturday, but Paul Caffrey was talking about the negativity of the Dublin Football Championship and how it was just negative football that they were playing, which is out of sync with how the county game is going at the moment. It's more difficult to find players to fit a style of play that's going to be suitable for it. So I don't know. I mean, maybe Dublin, like all empires, got fat, and this is the period of like, we need to have regeneration and remedial action, and the rose bush needs to be cut back to the stem and for the growth to come again. I don't know. At least there is some doubt about it when there hasn't been doubt about it. Given the resources that they have in terms of a playing pool, you would assume that they will fix it quicker than most counties will be able to fix it.
How many how many managers of entry-county teams went to bed last night thinking we have a chance of winning Sam Maguire? And how much is it linked to Dublin?
Way more than has happened at any point in the last decade, you would say.
I would say so too. I would say it's in double figures, and like some of them may be completely diluted.
But I
think it's all Division 1. And
I think Derry must be thinking,
Derry and Galway as well. Yeah,
like we have a chance here. We actually, if we just go on a bit of a roll and the fixtures open up for us, who are we going to fear? Who are we going to fear? Yeah. In what circumstances? Okay, we will game plan for everybody, but the teams who we know have the ability to retain the ball against us for 10 minutes, kill us, like goal scoring, rapier thrust, where's that team? Kerry have it. Like, Clifford seems to be pretty good at football again. Shawnee Shea seems to be pretty good at football again. So, right, we need to move on, but the Dubs are in red and in crisis. If you're a Dubs fan, how much of a crisis do you feel, or is it like, actually, you know what, this is grand. We're reading everything you say. We're watching you. We're watching you.
We'll quickly move through the other red here because it's the Olympic Games. Like, the Olympic Games has been in red forever, right? I mean, has it ever not been in red? Like, this is nothing new. We're not coming on here this morning to say anything new. But does this feel like a kind of a more insignificant, a more kind of grimly insignificant on a sporting sense, a more a theatre of misery than it's ever been, or is it just recency bias?
I don't know. Because do you care about the bad stuff when the fastest, fittest people are up against each other and it seems like they're on a fairly level playing field? Like, do we not all have this great ability to have a split personality when we're watching this? The psychosis is, I know that this is bad. It's like watching Bayern Barcelona versus Man City or Man City versus PSG. It's amazing. It's unbelievable. It's awful and terrible and horrible.
Because it is grotesque.
But it's beautiful.
Beautiful.
I feel the same. Frequently, I feel the same about the Olympics. It's like, oh my God, this is terrible. And then the gun goes, and you're like, wow, look at how fast they're running. This is amazing.
Yeah.
No one's ever run this fast before. Oh, it's over. Like,
Yeah.
that's why the sports washing works.
And it's always been that way until last week when you have actual children crying on international television. Like, I mean, obviously the Valieva story has been covered very, very well, but even with the young skater Trisova as well, like shouting at her coach saying, I hate the sport, I will never skate again, never. Like, I mean, the identification of what's grotesque probably happens a long point before this, but it does feel that a lot of passing viewers, maybe their eyes were a little bit more open last week as a result of this. Like, again, it's nothing new that there is this kind of like murky political connection with the Olympics at almost every games.
And in every country.
Yeah.
In every country. UK, Team GB, whatever it was, all those goals in London do not pass the sniff test.
Yeah, but I mean, of course, this is the worst one of all because this was in China, and I'm sure Sochi was even worse than that again. Both of those are definitely worse than the London games.
That's it. It's like, what about Rie?
Yeah, exactly.
No, but anyway.
Just two things just to bring up that, like, I mean, people might have missed this last week, for example. There was a Beijing spokesperson who did a press conference, and somebody at a press conference asked her, Yan Jiarong is her name, a question was raised regarding the IOC's position on reports of concentration camps and forced labour of the Uyghur population. And she said, I think these questions are based on lies. Some authorities have already disputed such false information with a lot of solid evidence. You are very welcome to refer to all those evidence and facts. And then she also waded into the area of Taiwan. And she said, I have to take a solemn position. What I want to say, there is only one China in the world. We are always against the idea of politicising the Olympic Games, which is, I mean, hilarious after mentioning the idea of one China, which is quite timely when you look at Thomas Bach's empowering closing speech yesterday, where he refers to the Olympic Games as something that gives us stronger than the forces that want to divide us. You give peace a chance, which, I mean, is deeply ironic given the one China scenario is going to I don't know, the giving peace a chance and one China will result in a situation not unlike what we're seeing in Russia and Ukraine at the moment, when China decide that Taiwan is theirs in a little while, and we have war on two fronts. So that's where the Olympic Games is at the moment. More flagrantly awful than always, which is really saying something.
Michael Jackson's Heal the World comes on and Thomas Bach moonwalks off, really capturing the mood with the single hand of diamond glove glistening in the sky.
Yeah, bring MJ back.
I mean, if any organisation could rehabilitate the reputation of Michael Jackson, it is the IOC.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. That is enough for the Olympic Games. That is our coverage of the Winter Olympics concluded.
All right, Duffer Watch. We're going to do a Duffer Watch section every week, just because it's box office. It is like it was awful that the weather was so bad on Friday evening and the conditions were so miserable. But I'm in on watching Duffer week in, week out. I'm in on his press conferences. I'm in on whatever he has to say. I'm in on watching the torment of him after being beaten 3-0. This is somebody who was living this gig. We didn't get a chance to talk about the press section that he did last week, where he talked about the housing crisis and being on daft and emailing people and not getting answers back. Like, so he's trying to find accommodation for her. He's got a lad coming from Finn Harps. I don't know, whoever it is. He's got a guy coming from Finn Harps who he said was working 2 jobs up there to come down and work 1 job, and he's essentially taken a pay cut to live in the Dublin metropolitan area, and I presume somewhere close to Chelsea, which is exactly where we live. And you can hear the ground from my kid's bedroom because the windows are pretty thin. But anytime there was the goals the other night when we were putting them to bed, they're like, "What's that noise?" Like, oh, doesn't sound good.
They're the away fans.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, it feels like it's something special is happening, and then what happens? They get beaten 3-0.
But that just adds to the intrigue as well, right? Because what are you doing after they lose 3-0? you're not turning off the television. You're waiting to hear what Damien Duff has to say after a defeat, which I actually thought that he was pretty okay with the performance. Obviously not okay with the result. I think that was the main takeaway from Friday night, was that this is a team that looked to be more than competent, and they're just going to struggle to get results because other teams have better players than them. And it's Damien Duff has to now prove himself to be an excellent manager, because he's got that extremely tough task of achieving more than what might be the sum of their parts. Like I don't know if on paper you'd have them as in the bottom reaches of the table, but I presume that's exactly where their squad in inverted commas deserves to be. So can he get more than their talents deserve over the next little while? If he can, then I think that's going to be a phenomenal story. But I also think that just Duff trying to figure his way out of a tricky situation is in itself fascinating. And as you say, the press conferences every week are going to be appointment viewing. It's going to be on the back pages. It's a guaranteed avenue onto the television screens and onto the back pages, which is something the league probably has struggled to get over the last little while.
Yeah, and you hope that everybody appreciates this, as opposed to like, this is the bit where they break through to having public interest beyond League of Ireland fans. Very important that happens. Jack Byrne's return also helping that. A bunch of other young players. The fact that there's another Rovers kid, we already talked about this, on trial at Hamburg. It's like, well, that's somebody gone from Rovers to City to Inter and potentially Hamburg in the last couple of years. Like, well, the system there is working. That's not a bad system. It'd be great if they could play a couple of seasons for us in the league. But yeah, so that's this week's Stuff for Watch. Anything else? Did you have it? Is there anything that you want to reveal about your own experience of this? No,
experience of Duffer Watch. No, like, I mean, looking forward to getting to see that team and talk this year. For me, it was LOI late night with Nathan and Johnny Ward on the 16 bus.
Was it as dirty as they made it sound?
Yeah, worse, dirtier. It was. Let's just say that Johnny Ward is in the company of a lot of people on the 16 bus. It was filthy. It was beautifully filthy. So I just want Johnny Ward on the 16 bus, tuning or I guess phoning in live into LOI late night every Friday night, and I'll be happy.
You can get it back on podcast, but this is our Twitter Spaces. It's a live show on Friday night after the game finish and after we go off air on Friday night off the ball. So that's Duffer Watch at 3. Rory McIlroy is at number 2 here in the green. Rory McIlroy is fast becoming one of the most interesting characters in world sport. When it was like maybe his golf game isn't going to be good enough to match what's going on at the very top echelons, maybe he's not going to be top 10 player in the world, maybe he's not going to really be contending for majors anymore. It's like, no, actually, you know what, I am the moral leader. I have become a moral compass. After, so everyone's like, oh, he played golf with Trump, and that comes up in our comments on YouTube all the time. He did play golf with Trump, and then he said he made a mistake and he wouldn't do it again. It was something that he learned, and he clearly engaged with the feedback and the commentary around that, and started to just do a bit of reading outside. And it turns out they were all doing a bit of reading outside. It turns out Phil Mickelson knew exactly what was going on in Saudi Arabia. So if you missed this, right, last week, I don't know how you missed it, but maybe you did. It was last Thursday. Phil Mickelson speaking to Alan Shipnuck. Shipnuck's got a book out, and this is the early extracts of it. Here is a direct quote from Mickelson. "We know they have a horrible record on human rights. They execute people over there for being gay. Knowing all of this, why would I even consider it? Because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reshape how the PGA Tour operates. They've been able to get by with manipulative, coercive, strong-arm tactics because we, the players, had no recourse. As nice a guy as PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan comes across as, unless you have leverage, he won't do what's right. When the Saudi money has finally given us that leverage, I'm not sure I even want the SGL to succeed. But just the idea of it is allowing us to get things done with the PGA Tour." He also talked about the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, and he called the Saudis scary motherfuckers. In the meantime, what's happened is that all the other golfers have decided, not really, okay, so Phil's kind of blown our cover here. How can we go? Bryson DeChambeau was the last shoe to drop. Was like, oh, I'm totally committed to the PGA Tour. I'm really interested in seeing what happens. Dustin Johnson, a lot of speculation out there over the last while, but I'm committed to the PGA Tour. Let's hear what Rory McIlroy had to say after the Genesis at the weekend last night.
I don't want to kick someone while he's down, obviously, but I thought they were naive, selfish, egotistical, ignorant. A lot of words to describe that interaction he had with Shipnock. It was just very surprising and disappointing, sad. And I'm sure he's sitting at home sort of rethinking his position and where he goes from here.
Right. Good man, Rory. I'm not dressing this, but I don't want to kick somebody while he's down, but boom, I've got my hobnails on and we're going for it. And he's right. You know, he's right to do this, because what Mickelson revealed was that they knew what they were getting into. What all those golfers know what they're getting into when they go and they take the money from Saudi Arabia. They all now have been exposed as people who endorse the regime by taking the money. That they're not innocent, they're not just there to grow the game and all that bollocks. What he did was he said the quiet bit out loud. We're fully aware, we're taking the money anyway because it gives us leverage, and this other thing over here, which is actually more important to us than human rights abuses, people being executed for being gay, or the murder of journalists. That stuff doesn't matter to us as much as the money matters to us. And Rory McIlroy had said, no, I'm not taking that money. Ages and ages and ages and ages ago, before the figures became it's hundreds of millions they would have paid Rory McIlroy to come out and say, you know what, I think there's a good opportunity here for us to be agents of change. We can be the David Hasselhoff of our generation. But no, McIlroy's like, no, I'm not doing that. Mickelson was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. Just maybe I will take it. I don't know. He was leaving open the possibility of it, but then it was like, no, I always knew that we wouldn't take it. It was just to try and screw over the PGA Tour here. So. But fair play to Rory McIlroy, because he did not hold back.
Like, I mean, there is sort of like a code on tour, isn't there? That, like, I mean, you're supposed to stay relatively pally. You're not supposed to I guess, throw anybody under the bus. And I guess that's why there's such a vanilla tone around everything that they say. But, like, I mean, Rory McIlroy's completely changed that. Like, I mean, Phil Mickelson's next press conference is going to be fascinating to see how he actually comes back from this. This was... Yeah, like he kind of reached for every word under the sun there. Kind of like a grotesque, unbelievable, bizarre, unprecedented sort of...
Stop it, he's already dead.
Yeah, like, to go after somebody like that, it's incredible. And it's almost as if McIlroy has reached a number of different points over the last couple of weeks where he could easily have been fairly self-satisfied. He's like, I said my bit and I'm okay, I can sleep well at night. And then he's kept saying more and he's kept saying more and he's kept saying more, as if, you know, that he really does actually want to wake these guys up to what they've kind of supported over the last little while and say, listen, this is just absolutely not good enough and we can't just let this sleep. And I'm sure he keeps getting asked about it, but he keeps delivering. And I mean, he's like, for whatever Phil's going to come back with some, like, there's a 50% chance that Phil Mickelson comes back with some sort of terrible dad joke this weekend or whenever he's going to be in front of the press again, and maybe that kills it. But his PR team will be working on something good right now, I suspect.
They're going to earn their money this week. So Rory McIlroy in the green, could have put Phil Mickelson in the red, but Rory McIlroy's triumph in that instance is far more important than Mickelson. Who else? Last one for us in green?
Harry Kane, Spurs. That performance on Saturday in what was, I think was the game of the season because of, like, I mean, it's easy to get carried away with the personalities on the sideline, but Conte against Pep is a pretty good encounter. And I know that we've seen a mirror image of this in the past, like certainly midway through last season, these two sides obviously went head to head and Spurs kept countering Manchester City, but this obviously just has so much more at stake. Liverpool fans kind of watching from behind the couch, seeing if Tottenham Hotspur can do them a favour as they try and get back into this title race, and they absolutely do. Harry Kane, is he number 9, is he number 10? Manchester City didn't really seem to know the answer to that question and he ran rings around them. There will always be a complete explosion of love for Harry Kane, especially in England when he does anything good.
Did he get his move?
But
is this his audition? Is like, come on, this is what you could have had. Door number 2.
Well, I think we all know that it's not down to necessarily him or to Manchester City. It's
might be next summer. They might be able to force a move. But maybe here's the thing. Maybe what he's done here is given Conte and him a bond that is unbreakable.
Yeah, like I will say it's been one good game. I don't think with the one good game...
No, we're overreacting here. What are you talking about? Come on.
Sorry, I mean, obviously. But does that change Manchester City's valuation of him? I don't think so. I think that everything that Harry Kane did well at the weekend, he has done before. It was the first time this season that he had done it. And the big problem with Manchester City last summer was that they wouldn't pay that amount of money because Harry Kane at that age is probably not worth 150 million. Haaland and Mbappe maybe, but Harry Kane's a lot older. The one thing that we can be 100% sure of is that Harry Kane is going to be 1 year older this summer than he was last summer. That's analysis for you. And for that reason, how low will Daniel Levy allow the price to go? If it's not below 100 mil, I'm not sure Manchester City.
It's gone back up to 150 after that.
Yeah.
OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. This is the performance rankings every week. We run them through from red, amber and green. If you want to get involved, you can send us your own ideas and we'll give away a Gillette starter pack a little bit later on. Luke says it's not a crisis but definitely a transitional period and it won't be fixed overnight for Dublin. It won't be fixed overnight, but will it be fixed by the time they reach an All-Ireland semi-final against a team who previously they would have been expected to beat but who now fears them not? So that's the big question for us. How quickly can they turn it around? John Claffey says, I think the Offaly footballers should get a 28-0 victory for the cancelled game in Galway over the weekend. I agree with that, John. Excellent. Yeah, a great suggestion. Rommel says, Gilroy knows Kildare preventing Dublin Division 1 having an elite 8-team status at the moment with Galway and Derry on standby to replace them. That would be 9 teams, Rommel, so screw you, your maths are no good. McGov says Scales to Celtic, also from Rovers. Correct, yeah. Started last week, scored and is getting enough game time for us all to be pretty confident that he's going to make the grade there as well. And then Shane says no mention of Cavan's Jake Doyle-Hayes scoring 2 goals for Hibs at the weekend. More anti-Cavan bias.
There's a lot of anti-Cavan bias in the show. It's pretty disgusting.
Well, you're not really a footballing county anymore. You're more golf. That's it, really. It's golf and running is the thing.
That's it. They're the two big things.
That's this week's performance rankings.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
We've got Mark Lawrenson up next. Stay tuned.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Are you a fan of the small ball?
The only sport I can think of where no rims makes a huge difference is baseball. The weight of the baseball is 145 grams. So that's 30 grams heavier than a sliotar. So the weight of the ball has absolutely nothing to do with it.
Jealous of all the inside analysis and crack on the football pod? Well, we've got you covered with the hurling pod. Join myself, Will O'Callaghan, along with James Skehill and Paul Murphy for the best insight this hurling season.
Quinlan hurled the year and it was so good to give it from next year.
Coming soon to OTB Sports.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance PLC.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
12 minutes past 8, time for us to turn our attention to the Premier League this week here on OTB AM, and I'm delighted to say Mark Lawrenson is with us. Mark, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, thanks.
We have a title race. We're all very excited about this.
Yeah, what a result that is. I mean, Harry Kane, he's hardly played for the last 3 months, and he suddenly decides to play his best form on the day. They were good, Tottenham, but he was magnificent, wasn't he?
Was it a natural thing that after everything they went through in the summer that it was going to take him a time to get up to speed? Was it his motivation was gone when he thought that Nuno wasn't going to be a good manager? Was he not quite sure what he wanted himself? What's the explanation for the fact that he's back now?
Well, if we could all look inside his head, we'd probably know. I don't really know. I think one thing about it was obviously a massive game, and correct me if I'm wrong, haven't Tottenham had a relatively good record against City in the last few years? Certainly a lot better than most other teams. So maybe it just turned him on, you know. City away, everyone writing Tottenham off. They can't do this. What's happened to Harry Kane? He hasn't scored for 4 games. Yada yada yada. But I think a lot of praise must go down to the manager Conte, because you know whatever they were going to do, they had a real go at Manchester City, and that just shows that that's probably the best way they can play. Because if you really seriously think about it, I mean, Son and Kane are outstanding footballers. So why wouldn't you try and create as many opportunities for the two of them and play in your opponent's half, because they will win your games, and that's exactly what they did on Saturday.
They actually really needed the points as well. That's if they're to have any hope of finishing in the top 4. And before that game, if we were all penciling in a routine 2-0 win for Man City, which I think most of the football world was, then they would have been 10 points behind Manchester United. with a bunch of games in hand, fair enough. But now all of a sudden, like, are they actually a good shout for finishing fourth?
They've just improved the chances. Don't forget it's Tottenham, and they're a bit like Arsenal. They can be really, really flaky, both sides. Yeah, they can play some outstanding football, win games, but then they go somewhere and get rolled over, and it's as though they hardly even turn up. So it's an excellent result. The only problem is you only get 3 points whatever you do, but it was just an outstanding performance. But I think it's still a little bit watch this space with both those two London clubs. They're very, very similar.
At the same time, over the weekend, Manchester United seem to have come somewhat out of their funk in remarkable circumstances against Leeds, where it looked like all of the flakiness that we have come to associate with Manchester United in recent seasons was on full display. It goes back to 2-2 and you're like, oh, what's going to happen here? But they dig themselves out, and there's in-game changes from a manager who seems to know what he's doing, and it just, I don't know. You're like,
yeah. I mean, I was there Tuesday at Old Trafford, and they were average, to say the least. I mean, you probably won't remember. You're not old enough, but I remember this fixture where you'd have George Best against Paul Rooney, Bobby Charlton against Jack, Dennis Law against Bremner, and Nobby Stiles against Alan Clark. And I mean, it all kicked off literally. They'd be sending off. They'd be like topping each other, but the football would be fabulous. And this was a modern day sort of replay of the way that it used to be. But no, they were good, Manchester United. But look, the one thing about them is they just have real difficulty playing against teams who sit in, because they are very, very much a counter-attacking team. But against Leeds that you're always going to create opportunities. And the games are very, very open because you can't play any other way. And by the way, they're very, very poor at the back. And I know they had injuries and stuff, Leeds, but they're just one of the most open teams in the league in terms of scoring goals against them.
It was a proper old school game. Scott McTominay posted a photo on Instagram of his left ankle, and it was completely battered at the end of the game. Obviously, McTominay himself did a lot of battering, and
I was going to say. Yeah, I was a soppy sod. What are you doing that for? It's called football. It's what happens. Well, what does he want?
I should say his caption was "Leeds away, proper game," football emoji. So he clearly embraced it.
Yeah, well, I mean, and obviously there's that. It's hatred between the two clubs, as everybody knows. And I reckon every time he went out for a throw-in, if you're a Man United fan, the abuse he must have got would be amazing. But I have to tell you, playing in games like that is just fabulous. So really good result for Man United. I'd say they got thrown Tuesday night by the skin of their teeth. They were outplayed by Brighton, but they've started to, it looks like with yesterday. But we don't know, do we? Because that's probably the first time they played what I would say 90 minutes rather than 45 minutes. So I don't know who they play next game, but it'll be interesting to see the performance.
Atletico. It's the two.
Well, yeah, I mean, I meant in the league. Yeah,
they've got actually Brentford and Watford, I think, next two games, if I'm right.
Oh, wow. Watford, and then it's Watford next up on Saturday, and then it's the Manchester derby on Sunday week.
I missed the Brentford game.
Okay.
At the Etihad. So it's like, and I mean, it was yourself going through the fixtures. Then I think you got Liverpool, Spurs and Liverpool as well in between, in and around the second leg of the Atletico game. So that is all happening between now and like this day next month. So really, those 6 fixtures, they define the season of Manchester United.
Yes, absolutely. And excuse me, I'm sure it's been a worry to the manager, to Ranieri, which is, go back to Tuesday in comparison to yesterday. And first half Tuesday, well, they never had the ball. That's the first thing. I mean, Brighton were really good at keeping the ball off them, but when they did get it, Manchester United, they kept giving it away. And there was that kind of thing at home. It felt like, it was very, very strange for them to play at home. And when soon as somebody makes a mistake, I think Harry Maguire misplaced a pass, and it's like, ooh. And it can be difficult, that, because you really seriously got to convince the supporters that you're on it. But yesterday will do so. But as I say, we'll wait and see. And those fixtures are really, really interesting, obviously. So, and that, as you rightly say, will define their season. Atletico are having a poor run, aren't they? They get beat at home by Getafe or someone like that the other day, who are bottom of the league, aren't they, La Liga?
there's a really good opportunity for them to go through and build some confidence, and you know, this season could turn around for one of those teams that's going to finish fourth and think, yeah, we got out of jail there with a good squeak towards the end of the season. But any of them could go on a run of form at the moment, and you wouldn't be terribly surprised if at the end of the year we're looking back and going, oh, that was the moment that things changed for them. They put 5 good results back to back, and that was it. They qualified.
Yeah, definitely. But then I would say probably you can say the same about Arsenal, because they're a bit like that, aren't they? They have this, you know, they go out on a run and beat everybody as well. But as I say, that themselves and Tottenham are flaky. I've always said that I thought United would get there just because they've got, however badly they play, they will always get opportunities. And of course, you've got the Ronaldo fella up front, but you've just got some really creative players and some match winners as well, apart from Ronaldo.
Who's the most flaky of those 3 clubs, Arsenal, Tottenham and Manchester United? I would say Arsenal, because they always, since Wenger left, they've just been that way. I don't know what it is about them. I mean, when you consider the best of Arsenal's teams under Wenger, and you know, Vieira and Petit and you know, all those guys, that the lads at the back, they were just completely different class to the team that they've got now, and that's in essence why they're flaky. They can be a very good side, and we've got some really good players, but I don't think mentally they're anything like as strong as that former, well, the best team under Wenger, definitely. Do you not think that, like, I guess this was obviously a repeat of the opening weekend of the season, and that opening weekend of the season was a pretty grim one for Arsenal, and if you take that point and you take the point that they were at on Saturday, there is a notable upward graph, and that includes things like bottle and grit, and they are less flaky now than they were at the start of the season, and that's all you can really ask for, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. They've definitely improved, but they had a long way to improve, and they don't frighten you. That's the one thing when you play against Arsenal now, is that they don't frighten you as a team. You know, you can have a 20-minute spell where it could be untouchable, but they do not frighten you. It's the days of going to Arsenal and playing away when you think, crikey, if we get like a 2-0 defeat, happy days, get on the bus and go home. But it's not that anymore. And as I say, Tottenham are very, very similar. But Manchester United, I would think, out of the 3 would be the favourites to finish fourth. West Ham haven't got enough players, and I don't really see anybody else. I mean, Wolves are going well, but I think that's a massive ask for them as well.
Like, it does the constant leaks from the Manchester United dressing room worry you at all? I know that Manchester United have come out to say that none of the reports are true, and Rangnick says that yesterday's result was the best answer to those possible things, but you wouldn't be overly surprised if they don't get a positive result over the next couple of days, that the response in the papers will be reports inside the dressing room say that they're unhappy with Rangnick's methods, etc., etc.
Yeah, well, I think there are 2 points. I think when you get stories come out from the dressing room that are obviously, anti, if for want of a better description, nearly always from someone who's not in the team, who's disaffected and obviously just, tells his mate, or his mate brings somebody at newspapers or whatever, something like that. Results obviously change all that. But also the fact that, if there are some people in there who just look at the manager and think, I'm not really going to play, he doesn't really fancy me, it can make other people disaffected, because the other thing with it is that Rangnick's going, isn't he, in May, when, supposedly after the last game, and players will sit in there, and I'm afraid you have to bring money into it because it's part and parcel of it, and they're saying, well, he can't affect me, I'm not playing, he doesn't fancy me, but I've got a great contract, and I'll wait till the next fella comes in and try and prove to him that I'm in the team, which is completely wrong, as we all know. But that's the way that it is, and it just, I don't know. I don't know about the dressing room, but I don't think it's the best dressing room. And we always used to say at Liverpool, it's no good having 19 teas and 1 coffee. That you've got to have 20 teas. So if some are pulling in the opposite direction, but they're not really playing, they've got to deal with it. The problem is now at the moment, as a manager, you can't, unless he kind of knows roughly who it is and just says, right, cuts them off and says, right, you're training with the reserves. But I can't see him doing that.
Like, I guess that is probably one of the many issues that comes with having a bloated squad. Like, I guess we can sit here and say, Manchester United have cash to burn. They can, take punts on players here, there and everywhere. But in the end, those players who are sitting on the bench, or maybe not even making the bench, that are part of that bloated squad, are the ones who are going to be the problem.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's let Van der Beek go to Everton, hasn't he? Not saying that he was a problem, but Martial's gone, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Lingard obviously didn't let go, so he'll have had the hump, Lingard, but he started yesterday, didn't he?
Yeah. So,
he'll have had the hump as well, but I think the clever thing is, and, that's why Ferguson was so good in terms of keeping everybody together, apart from the fact they were an outstanding team, as we know, and they had some world-class players. But I think he was very much he might have left, he might have said to, I don't know, Fernandez yesterday, look, I'm leaving you out today because there's going to be a scrap, it's Leeds away and all those kind of things, but you're playing in midweek against Atletico. And I think that's something that he did. And I'm pretty sure that Klopp's a bit like that, and maybe even Pep, which is, you leave people out, but then you give them a sort of say you're going to play in midweek. So it softens the blow, and you just, instead of going away thinking the manager's an absolute tosser, he doesn't know what they're doing, you think, well, I'm starting on Wednesday, which is, I think it's just a modern way at the moment.
You mentioned Liverpool there, and while there is a tendency after Manchester City lose any game to kind of look at what's going wrong for Manchester City or why they've slipped to make this a title race, that just isn't true in this case. It is Liverpool absolutely keeping the foot on the gas at the moment, ensuring that any slight blip within 90 minutes for Manchester City will get punished. They're flying at the moment, Mark.
Yeah, I was there, and I was at the game I was working on Saturday, and in all honesty, in the first 45 minutes they were ordinary.
Right.
And then you're kind of thinking, because he changed I think he made 7 changes, Klopp. And then you're thinking, right, wonder if he'll change it at half time. But he stuck with it. But then he brought the cavalry on, which he kind of did in Milan midweek. I mean, me about raving about Thiago, but he just came on and changed the game. He just made it made it look ridiculously easy. And as you saw, the quality of the goals, but Norwich were decent and went for Liverpool on the counter-attack, and Liverpool were a little bit all over the place. But the thing about it, where are we? We're coming towards the end of February, and normally now in your squad, you've probably got 2 or 3 players who are out with kind of injuries, which might be, certainly not just a couple of weeks, but long-term injuries. Just looking at Liverpool, I think apart from Jota, who now actually saying even he might be available for the Carabao Cup at the weekend, but they've got everybody fit. Joe Gomez appeared and played right back. They've got everybody fit, which for a manager this time of the year, after all the games they've played, is really, really unusual. So you've got now with Liverpool, which you probably didn't have for a while, everybody's fit. Everybody wants to play, and he's almost got 2 teams, which, as I say, for a football club at that level, it is amazing when you think about that.
You'd still make Manchester City favourites to win the title. Yeah. It's a 6-point gap. There's a game in hand. They still have to play each other as well. So while you make City favourites, it is there for Liverpool. It's in their own hands to a certain degree.
They have to beat City away, we're all thinking. But I think that the thing is, it's always easier to chase. Always easier. It's when you're actually leading that it's the difficult thing, because you just need 1 or 2 to start thinking, they might catch us, those kind of things, and then performances dip. And basically, we just expect Liverpool and City to win every game, don't we?
Because in the past, they've proven that they were capable of doing that. That's why this game against Spurs ends up being so important. Is there a blueprint? I know no other team has the collection of players that Spurs have that are actually perfectly built for a counter-attacking game like the one we've just seen with Son and Kane. I understand that, but is there a bit of a blueprint for other teams to look at and go, we've got some fast players who can actually interlink with each other quite well at the top end of the field?
Yeah, but have they got a Kane on majestic form?
No.
I would suggest no. And Son continues to be one of the most underrated players in the Premier League, and he's just so quick and such a clever player. So I don't see it. And I think obviously a lot of the teams, when they go to play City, obviously, straight away they're thinking, you know, let's be really, really tight. Let's just sit in and let's stop them playing. But it's almost impossible. And also, they probably, against most teams, have 80% possession. And with the players that they've got, the creativity, etc., they will always make chances and obviously generally win the majority of the games. So I don't think there is a blueprint as such for the rest of the teams, unless it's a Liverpool when they go there, because they could certainly play the way that City did.
Just a couple of other things to touch on, Mark. I mean, you're talking about important runs and tough fixtures. If you look at Everton at the moment, obviously they're looking over their shoulder big time at the moment after the defeat at the weekend. Their next two fixtures in the Premier League are Manchester City and Tottenham. This is going to get more worrying before they start to get a sense of relief, right?
Yeah. Well, look, you know, they've always, at the start of the season under Benitez, defensively, I know they had a good start first 5 or 6 games, but defensively, you look at them and they're all over the place. So understand what Frank Lampard has done with you know, taking on Ali and Van der Beek, etc. But it's their Achilles heel is defensively. So you look at those two games that you just reeled off and you think, well, they won't get any points from that, and maybe, you know, one or two of the bottom clubs might get another victory and be sucking them in even more. I don't think they will get relegated, and one of the reasons is not because of Everton, but because generally down the bottom of the league, you know, the teams that we're looking at will hardly win any games. I know, obviously, that Burnley won away at the weekend, which is a fabulous result for them, and Watford won, but you don't expect any of those two teams to go on a run. I think Norwich will go anyway. I mean, they started off, didn't they, just out of the bottom three, and actually played well at Liverpool. And I don't know if they're rock bottom now, but they can't be far off.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's obviously Everton and Leeds would need to get dragged in. I think Newcastle's form at the moment probably suggests that they're going to go free. Yeah. It's just, and I totally agreed with you. I thought that the bottom three are ring fenced, they're gone down, the relegation battle is over, and then it's just that Burnley result at the weekend as well, which just gives you second thoughts.
And Watford.
I know Watford won as well, but Burnley, it seems, given that they've got a record of getting out of these situations, nothing as grim as this, admittedly, in the past, and the signing of Weghorst as well in January seems to have been relatively transformative. Well, the only thing, and as good a result as it was for Burnley, you just look at them, they don't create many opportunities, do they? Yes, we know they're difficult to beat, and obviously that's shown by the table because of the number of games that they've drawn. I mean, they're still very hard to play against, but it doesn't really look like scoring. I didn't see any of the game, I presume. As well as Burnley played, Brighton had a hangover from the midweek game at Old Trafford. So I think that I've just said for a while that I think they'll go down this year, and I don't think behind the scenes at Burnley things are good. And I don't mean on the football side. We know about this thing, the financial thing, where if they do get relegated, they have to pay off 60 million quid. I mean, how the hell are they going to do that? And I just get the impression that as good as the manager is, I think, you know, the people running the club, they've gambled, and it seems as though they've borrowed all the money to buy the football club, which is unbelievably dangerous when it's somebody like Burnley who predominantly year on year struggle to stay in the league. Just one last one, Mark, just on Chelsea. Had they not, well, I guess what the situation now, if you look at the table, is that if Arsenal win their 2 games in hand on Chelsea, they'll only be 2 points behind Chelsea. You can make a case that if things don't go well over the next little while, they could get dragged into making this 2 spots that are going to be open for Champions League football. But one thing that's inarguable after the weekend is Romelu Lukaku's performance on Saturday. 7 touches in the game against Crystal Palace. Since Opta started recording, no player who has played 90 minutes has recorded fewer touches. So they started recording in 2003. So in those 19 years, Romelu Lukaku's 7 touches is the lowest in the Premier League. It was a desperate performance in terms of not being involved, and Tuchel didn't exactly come out to defend him afterwards. He was speaking on BN Sports and he says, no, it's not about the system. And he was asked to elaborate about the performance of Lukaku, and he says, well, it is what it is. And it does seem that there was a little bit of beef that kind of came up between these two guys, obviously after his Sky Italia interview around Christmas time. That doesn't show any signs of dissipating. This is a real problem for Chelsea.
Yeah, absolutely. But if we're saying that he basically didn't try a leg, but did anybody create any chances for him? That would be one of my replies. That whatever you think about these guys, they love scoring goals. So why wouldn't you want to score? And I did something the other day with some of your colleagues, and I just said, look, what about this? They were talking about Lukaku and they've talked about Kane, and I said, what about this swap in the summer? Lukaku goes to Tottenham, play with Conte again, and Kane goes to Chelsea. I mean, I don't think it'll ever happen because they hate each other, don't they, both clubs? But I was just looking at the way that the two strikers were playing, because before Saturday, Kane had been struggling, as we know, and we could almost say the same thing about him, which was was he thinking about last summer how he missed out, didn't go to City? Is he thinking about the summer coming up where he could possibly leave anyway at 29 and Tottenham could still get a fortune for him? But I thought the swap for the two would work for fun, but I think the thing with Lukaku, that he'll be gone in the summer, and Chelsea will obviously reinvest in terms of who they bring in.
Yeah, will there be a strong market for Lukaku after this again? Do people just write the season off?
Yeah, people will take him. I don't think there's any doubt about that whatsoever. I mean, why he came out with that interview, I never ever know. I mean, we've had this for years where somebody would go and speak to like the French newspaper and think it would never ever get back, which is absolutely in the world that we live in. It's ridiculous. And I really don't understand why he said what he did say. And the problem is that, it's not as open anymore, which sounds ridiculous, where if you were left out of the team, you'd go and see the manager. You wouldn't go and see him straight away. So, after the name the team, but you go and see him on Monday, you go and knock on his door, and he'd expect you to go in and just say, Gaffer, what's the reasons why did you leave me out? And have a conversation with him. And if they're really clever managers, in the end, you'd kind of walk out the door and think, absolutely believed everything that he said, and he was right in what he said. But they don't do it. They go to the agent and they start crying to their agent and all that, and then let's do a piece in one of the papers and we'll do it that way, which is it's absolutely ridiculous. The grown men just go and see the manager, and if you have a row with the manager, you have a row with the manager. And the thing about that is that the manager thinks more about you thinking standing up for himself. And, I'll give him another chance. It's absolutely, totally ridiculous, this thing.
Mark, great stuff. Great to have you with us. Thanks a million.
Thank you. Cheers.
It's Mark Lawrenson giving us some thoughts there on the situation in the Premier League. If you've got views, if you've got a comment on it, you could get it into us now on the YouTube stream, or of course you can always WhatsApp us 0879 180 180. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Most of the newspapers are fairly similar. It's the goals from yesterday on the back pages, and etc. etc. The Elanga getting hit by a coin or a missile. It wasn't a coin in the end, was it?
I'm not sure.
It's a lighter. They picked up a load of lighters. It was a lighter that hit him on the head, and then he scores the goal and silences the crowd. So that's the back pages. We did want to play you this though. It's some footage from the crowd at Cusack Park, where in the Camogie yesterday. So a 2-6 to 4-point win over Clare in Division 1 of the Littlewoods Ireland Camogie League. This is a sideline fracas. Mars Cork victory is the headline in the Examiner this morning. So the camera's just picking out Davy Fitz on the left there, and he's walking towards a guy on crutches, and the referee is calling them both over. He's calling them both over, and then they're kind of getting into it with each other. Now we don't know if this is the start or the end of it, if there's already been something before this. But the referee is separating them.
Huh? Your man on the crutches from Gaelic.
Why are you recording? That was one of the reasons why we wanted to play that video. I was like, well, because the whole country wants to see it, it turns out. So Davy Fitz, I think, is sent off along with Clare joint manager Conor Dolan, according to Darragh Crahor and Cian Locke in the Examiner. The flashpoint came 5 minutes from time when the pair clashed on the sideline. Fitzgerald told the Clare Echo, absolutely delighted with the result, but a bit disappointed with what happened on the sideline. I don't think that there was any need for it, but that's the way it goes. it's not a great look when two men are overshadowing what's happening on the field of play in the camogie. I think they should all just reflect on that like they're not really there to be box office, are they? They're not really there to be the centre of attention. They're supposed to be there to help grow the game. But instead, something interferes with their growing of the game and they become the story. Now, what is it? What is it that forces them to inject themselves to the centre of the story? What impact do they think that has on the result? They're out there dying for the team? That they're winning the game for the team? Or are the players winning the game? Is it just ego that's getting in the way of this? Is that what you'd have to reflect the two men getting sent off while the women are out there playing? Like, come on.
Like the move to camogie is probably at the time looked like something that Davy was doing to take a step away from the spotlight. Also not manager of the team, he's coach, so not exactly the head honcho in this operation as well. Possibly suggests a move away from the spotlight as well. And lo and behold, a couple of games into the season, Davy Fitz is back in the spotlight. It tends to happen, and I mean this time of year, Davy's obviously got himself into hot water in the past. It was a National League game, wasn't it, where he ran on to the pitch to shoulder the Tipperary player those few years ago. So these things tend to happen when Davy's involved, all right? And
what are you doing?
I'd love to know what sparked it, because it
doesn't really matter though, does it? Like,
well,
you know,
as a pure sort of voyeur, you know, just
yeah.
I mean,
okay, fair enough. Out of nosiness,
complete nosiness. Like, I know that person there was like, "Why are you recording? Why didn't you start recording sooner, please? For love of God."
8:41 this morning. Let's turn our attention to the weekend's men's Gaelic football, and I'm delighted to say Anthony Moyles is with us. Anthony, good morning to you.
Morning, gents. How are we?
Kerry are the best team in the country, right? We should not be burying the lead here just because the Dubs are in crisis.
They certainly look that way, Ger. Yeah, they certainly look that way. Very impressive again at the weekend. Although, you know, Donegal didn't offer them a whole pile of resistance, to be honest with you. It felt like Donegal would have rather played against the breeze in both halves than actually have to force themselves to kick the ball with the breeze. So, yeah, Kerry were, effective, efficient, did what they had to do. You know, a little bit of a sticky patch first 15 minutes. Donegal just held on to the ball and they were trying to kind of, set themselves up. But then that's Kerry. They were trying to just kind of thinking that they would come at them, but actually they didn't really. Donegal were just trying to obviously waste as much time as possible, which was a decent enough strategy at the start. But once Kerry pushed up onto them and pushed up on the kick out, and really forced the turnovers, they rattled off a number of scores. Got a bit fortuitous with obviously Clifford's goal, but they really could have had another couple of goals, Ger, and they ran out easy winners in the end.
It does feel that we're not learning a whole pile new, though. Like, I mean, maybe that's just the nature of the league. Maybe it's because it's Donegal, as you say. We're pretty content to keep ball in the first half. They don't have Michael Murphy. It's impossible to kind of properly judge them either. But it does feel that on paper, this is the best team in the country that will need to prove that they can do it later in the summer. So how do they find out some of the answers to that question when it comes to bottle and grit at this point in the year?
I think all they can do on is that old adage is beat whatever's in front of them, really. And if you look at what they're doing, look, the conditions were absolutely shocking. They were shocking for the whole weekend. You'd kind of question, really. I know they had to wedge games in, but you really question, pitches may have been playable, but the fare that was on show in most of the situations was shocking, and it's very, very difficult to play Gaelic football with a breeze that's blowing, and that's on both sides. People think, oh, you have the wind behind you, but of course, you kick a ball up in the air, the wind catches it, and it goes 40 yards over a guy's head, or goes out over the sideline, or it's very, very difficult to try to play and try to, be effective, especially if you're a specific team that plays a specific type of game. On Kerry, I thought the defence were very, very good. I thought they were very solid. They transitioned the ball very well. O'Shea was back in his normal position, in his most effective position, which is running the line at 11. I know we'll talk about Dublin later, but that's what Dublin are missing. They're missing a guy who doesn't want to just come and take off easy ball. He'll win that hard ball running across the line of the half forwards, and then he looks inside for passes. They were able to keep Clifford in reserve. I thought Paddy Clifford had a good game. They had to move and they had to run and they had to put in a fair shift against Donegal, because Donegal will a high energy, lots of runners coming off angles. So you have to be effective against that. And you have to try to break that down and stop it, which they did. So look, I wouldn't be necessarily worried. I'm not saying you are worried. I doubt you are worried. I think you're just trying to play it down on. But I think they've shown plenty already, and in the dirt and in the mess and in the wind and the rain, they were still able to pick off some great scores. And they probably, honestly, they could have won that game by 10 or 11 points. I know Donegal had a bit of a spurt, but they took the foot off the gas, I felt. And as I said, the question marks which we had last year over their defence seems to be much more organised, much more in communication with each other. They're very well set up down the middle. They're not leaking goals. Again, they're a team that are coming. And I think O'Connor is doing a good job in the sense of he's resting certain players. He's giving guys little bits of breaks. And I'd say he's going to time his run. He thinks so, hopefully as effectively as possible.
Yeah, I think so. You mentioned the conditions there. I think there is something beautifully chaotic about this time of year, where you are seeing things happen that you wouldn't see any other time of the year. Like Sean O'Shea with the breeze at his back is like a racer in Mario Kart after they've driven through one of those magic mushrooms. It completely goes to a different size altogether. He can score from 50 yards. That the wind is detrimental if you're playing against it, but it also allows players like him to do stupid things, really, which are pretty magnificent.
Yeah, he was pretty imperious yesterday. They tried to stop him a number of times, and he's obviously, the size and bulk and everything else he's added on over the last kind of couple of seasons, added into obviously his unbelievable ability. He's a scary situation. He gave Brennan an absolute torrid time. I felt sorry for him because, you're standing there as a six. You've got a guy who's being handed the ball, nicely, and he's taking you on, he's turning you inside out, and he's able to solo away from you in those conditions. And Brennan's no slow coach, but it was just, it's one of those ones where you're praying that you can just hang on as a player. Unfortunately, he got substituted, but I think I can't remember who came in for him. He tried to get very physical with him, and that didn't work out either because as I said, O'Shea is well able to handle it both ways, or whatever way you throw it at him.
Yeah, that's what they're learning, isn't it? That defensive cohesiveness, the patterns that this current management team want them to play, that it's just not the same as last year. That's all they need to get from this league, is it?
Well, it's funny, there's always this myth about Kerry, that Kerry are really nice footballers and that they don't give it to you, and they won't have a nasty streak about them. That was always the kind of thing that was going on for many a year. But anytime we played them, Kerry would give it to you and would start it with you as much as end it. They had no bother taking certain players out. They had no bother. I remember in the 09 semi when we played them, I remember Brian Farrell got a broken nose within about 10 or 12 minutes. I remember Nigel Crawford was taken out. Look, it's all part of the game, but there's this idea. I think in the last number of years, that Kerry team came up against the Dubs in Croke Park, and maybe they didn't shy away from the nasty stuff and the stuff where markers had to be set down, but they just didn't win those battles. I think the ferocity of it maybe, and that kind of side of it, they lacked a little bit. They had all the skill, they had all that, and of course, but you have to remember Clifford and O'Shea, etc., were very, very young. Now these guys are in their pomp. And all of a sudden, they've added that physical size. When those guys are going to the gym and they're going extra stuff, and when they're in training sessions and they're clipping off each other, they know themselves that they're stronger, they're fitter, they're more well able for the I suppose the the wear and tear of both the league and the championship. And now they're really starting to play with their chest out. So the scary thing for the rest of the country is that they're now well able to handle it. If you want to try to psych them out, or you want to get physical with them, you want to start grabbing them, you want to start doing, like, I mean, you're grabbing men now who are 6'4", 6'5", and I had to laugh. Like, a lot of the Donegal lads were doing it, and they were looking up at a Clifford and O'Shea when they were doing it. You know, so, you know, you're kind of saying to yourself, this wouldn't be too bad if I was doing this to a fella who was 5'9". But when I'm now dealing with this individual who's a beast of a man, you know, it makes you think twice. And not only are they just big, but they're obviously big and unbelievably talented and well able to play football. So they're mixing it very, very well. And O'Connor will bring that backbone into them. And I'm not saying they didn't have the backbone. I'm just saying that at certain times, you know, that part of the game, they seem to be a little bit deficient on, whereas other teams were a little bit better. So, but I think that part of the game is the big change for me, and they seem to have really grasped it now over the last 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, it's a dream time to be getting that job as those players who are generational players come to an age where, as you say, they're in their pomp, and they're going to be in their pomp for the next couple of years. So Kerry must be feeling themselves a good bit at the moment. Let's talk about the Mayo team before we talk about Dublin. You know, we've talked about Mayo reaching All-Ireland finals but not quite being ready for it yet, and I don't know if they'll agree. Last year they probably were ready for it, but just they didn't handle the game as well as Tyrone did on the day. You wouldn't say there's a huge gap between those two teams. Where are they now? What's the scenario this season? What should our level of expectation be, having seen them come up and just handle business against Dublin in Croke Park?
Yeah, you know, I'm always wary with Mayo because the hype train just literally goes from 0 to 60 in about 2 seconds, and you know, people can just jump on, and then there's always that level of expectation that they ultimately will fail. So it's always tinged with that. But you know, I saw two sides to them on Saturday. You know, I think they're trying to again unearth some players that they need to add into that squad. Okay, so like, I mean, I look across the guys who played on Saturday night, and I didn't see anything that was majorly different, and a fella who was really putting his hand up. I just didn't see it. I saw, you know, the guys who will be there in the summer doing what they do and doing it very well. So when I'm talking about Keegan, I'm talking about Mullen, I'm talking about Ruan, Dermot O'Connor obviously is a massive bonus back, Henley in goals. But I didn't really see a massive amount of new talent, and as I say, really putting their hand up. Now, you might say, well, isn't that the same across many as a team? But really all you're looking for is you're only looking for 1 to 2 players. That's all you're looking for to really bring into a championship squad or your championship starting 15. You know, if you have to bring in 4 or 5 fellas, you know you're under pressure. Like they did handle Dublin well, Ger, but at the same time, I thought that, you know, I know we get on to Dublin, but I thought they would have handled them better. Right, you know, there was a couple of situations where they got, I thought, fortuitous. You know, the first goal, which was the hand pass, Dermot O'Connor flicked it up and hand pass over the head. Lee Gannon just made a bit of a mistake. It was probably his only mistake to make all night. He's a real find for Dublin. And, you know, he went to the ball rather than tracking the runner, and they got in. And then the next goal, which was, I thought, you know, O'Connor, I don't know if he meant that ball in. I think he slipped as he kicked it, and it just managed to get past the defender. And then once that happened, Dublin were opened up. But again, you know, Dublin probably could have got a couple of goals. They certainly should have happened in the second half, and I think it may have changed the outcome of that game. And then you'd be kind of scratching your head and saying, as a Mayo, you know, team, well, we came up here probably with a bit of confidence. We're playing a team who are really low on confidence and are trying to find themselves, and yet we were beaten or we drew. So it's really thin, that flip about the psyche. I think Horan will know that, you know, when he looks at his forward line, they didn't really shoot the lights out. They didn't really grab many scores. You know, like, I mean, O'Donoghue was they were all buzzing around but no one was really threatening that full back line, I thought. Like a couple of times they opened them up. It was more fortuitous than I felt than really by kind of clever strategy and things. Like, I mean, I think they got 7 or 8 scores from the goalkeeper and from the defenders, and Ruan, of course, tagged on a few. But Ruan, if you also think of that, Brian Howard was marking him for the first half and was dropping off him, so he was actually given very much the freedom of the field to attack. It was a different story when Fenton moved on to him in the second half. His effectiveness of the game and his ability to go forward went out of the game. So, look, are they in a good place, Jared? They're okay. They're good. They'll feel okay. They know they've players to come back. And he probably needs to, as I say, unearth 1 or 2 full back. Yeah, did well, I felt. Their defence was okay. Their defence was good. And the standout guy for me, like Gannon on the far side, was Plunkett. He came up and he kicked 2 unbelievable scores, really, really well settled, stuck them over with his right foot, and he was a bit of a force to be reckoned with now going forward. So that's the type of thing that Horan will be looking for. And again, it's another win over Dublin, so he ticks that box and he marches on.
What about the Dubs then? We had this conversation a little bit earlier on when we were putting them in the red in our performance rankings. We're kind of uncertain doing it at one level because, as I said earlier, there's zombies. That which is undead will never die, and there is a bunch of players still to come back. They do have massive numbers, if not quite strength and depth just yet. But from what you're saying there, that Desi's not going to be as worried after this as maybe he might have been after the first 2 games, in some respects, that they're starting to find some players, they're starting to develop some patterns. Okay, it's hard to distinguish after a performance like that, but listening to you, I get the sense that you believe there's something about this team, or there's still room for this team to grow and layer back in some all-time greats.
I watched it twice, Ger, and I went back on it numerous occasions on certain things that happened and big things that happened during the game. I thought they were much, much better on Saturday. I think as a management team, when they look back, they'll see one, that American football saying, which is, run to the ball. They ran to the ball hard. They chased hard on Saturday night. They chased Mayo down. They were back to really busting the gut, getting back. Whereas I saw other teams not doing it as effectively. Certainly when you go down to divisions, that's very much true. But I thought they really, really busted the gut on that. I thought their defence was much, much better. I thought Gannon was excellent. I think he's an excellent find for them. I think they brought an intensity to it that they hadn't brought in the first couple of games, and it was a different game. It was totally different from the Armagh game. There was hits, there was physicality on the ball. I thought the midfield was better. I thought their pattern of play and how they defended was much, much better. Okay, they stripped and they turned over Mayo on numerous occasions, and they just looked more solid. Their issue is going forward. So their issue is actually the half-forward line, I feel. Kilkenny had a great game. He attacked and I think he scored 3 points, and he put an awful lot of responsibility on his shoulders. But Bugler has been going really well, but I think he was a little bit caught out the other night. He seemed to be changing sides, which I don't think necessarily suited him. But I think Scully and Howard, for me, Scully has this thing where under Jim Gavin, he played a very, very important role where he would slow the ball down, and he would observe and kind of view what's going on, and then he would inject some pace or he would bring it back down. He was a kind of a tempo guy, but I don't think he realises, or maybe he's just not being told, that this new Dublin team are not about that. They're actually about quick tempo all the time. They're about trying to get the ball into the full forward line fast. And what's happening is they're getting caught between 2 stools a lot. They're kicking it long when they shouldn't be kicking it long. And they do it an awful lot from set pieces, which really makes me, kind of scratch my head when the opposition team are set up and they're sending in these long balls. Rather than doing it, as I said, when a ball is coming out of defence, they have someone in their half-forward line who wins it, a small little pop pass off to someone, and that's delivered in. That's what they're really missing. Kilkenny doesn't necessarily give you that, you see, on the half-forward line. Kilkenny is more of a guy who will take the ball on, he'll come at angles, he'll take a man on, but he doesn't deliver passes in, like say Shawnee O'Shea or like say Alan Brogan in Alan's day. Like they're missing an Alan Brogan type. They're missing a guy who can get the ball at 11, get his head up and deliver those passes. Because I thought young McGarry in full forward was doing really well. I was very surprised at him being taken off. Maybe he was injured. Like Dean got 6 out of 6, or I think or 5 out of 5. He'll do what he does, but again, they need someone inside, and they need someone delivering that ball inside. So that's where I think there's a break, right? And that's where I think they're really going to have to work on. Now, of course, have they got the players to come in and bring that for them? They certainly have, you know. And I think with O'Callaghan to come back, with Paddy Small to come back, with James McCarthy to come back, with not O'Gara. The halfback, well, you've McDade, and you also have the other halfback, the speedy halfback to come back. You know, they've got ample talent and guys who have that ability. Because if you think of Dublin a couple of years ago, they had that speed where they were running from the half-back line at massive pace, running towards the fences, and then either popping passes off or doing that backdoor cut. They don't necessarily have that anymore. They've gone for a lot of size in that half-back line. Like McMahon is a big man. As is Lahif. They're big men, they're big physical men on kickouts, but they're not giving you that breakneck speed that McCaffrey used to give you, or indeed McDade. So it's a slightly different thing, and it's a slightly different setup. They're looking to kick the ball more, but as I said, they're just not getting that ball delivered inside for me, either quickly enough or well enough.
But you can see that being worked out over the next 10 weeks. Let's move on, because we'll come back to them obviously week on week. They're going to be a big story for us. Here's Daniel Flynn talking with Aisling O'Reilly after Kildare's 1-point defeat to Tyrone. Have a watch this.
Daniel, tough conditions out there today. How would you sum up the performance for Kildare?
Yeah, tough enough. It's very sloppy through the middle, but pitch held up actually considering the weather. So it was a good game, I thought, all in all. Very evenly matched. Probably shooting let us down today. We had a couple of goal chances there towards the end of the game and didn't go in, and maybe the last 10 minutes in the first half we were a bit wasteful as well, so came back to haunt us in the end.
And in the dressing room after the game, what were you thinking? Were you thinking we left that one behind us because there was chances to win it?
Yeah, definitely. We're disappointed coming out of here, like, you know. Like that, we put in a good shift. Done ourselves justice, but just didn't get over the line in the end, so we're disappointed leaving. But look, happy with the performance and the way we're playing and trying to play. Just the end result didn't go well.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear. There was definitely parts of the performance that were excellent, and then parts of the performance you just think just a little bit of game smarts. There was a free they won with about 10 minutes to go when I think they might have been a point up still, and the referee moved it forward about 15, actually moved it forward about 20 yards to be honest, and instead of calling the keeper up to kick it, which he had just done, they took a quick one and get turned over, and you're like, just kill a minute here. What Tyrone would have done was they would have pulled their socks down, found an imaginary contact lens, had a little bit of a scrap, pointed over to the sideline, and the keeper comes up and gets his breath, kicks the point, 2 points in it, and it's like, well, that's how you win these games. And it's just a little bit of inexperience at this elite level they're at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% agree. There was another one, if you remember, where Woodgate intercepted a ball and took off like a hare, and did really, really well, and was flying away, and then kind of spilled it, and instead of just recycling and bringing it back out after going 50, 60 yards up the pitch, he tried to kick it across with his right foot across the pitch, and nearly worked out, but got intercepted, and that ends up coming down, and Donnelly kicks a point from it.
Frank Byrne gets it. There's two Kildare lads around him, and he's just like, no, thanks very much. This is where I get my man of the match award. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, and brilliant by him. But as I say, it ends up, I think Richie Donnelly comes down and kicks a score. So they're the small little things that, again, you know, Glenn Ryan and Anthony Rainbow will be looking at on the video and saying, listen, fellas, in these situations, this is what we have to do. Now, you know what? The rush of blood to the head, he's in Newbridge, the crowd roaring, you can hear it, but that's where those game smarts come in. They were very good, Ger. Like, I mean, you know, it's my first time seeing them this year. up close, I suppose. And I was very, very impressed by the new guys that they have. I thought they were excellent. They do rely a little bit too much on Flynn in the forward line. He's involved in pretty much everything. And he's that type of player. He can do something absolutely brilliant, and then he can do something shockingly bad. Now, he needs to start. If it's out of 10 and he's getting 10 balls, he needs to be thinking, right, this can't be a 60-40 situation. This has to be an 80 or a 90-10, an 80-20 or a 90-10 situation. I don't have to do something spectacular all the time. I just need to maybe lay a ball off and go on a loop and then come again. Because, as I said, he did some great things in the first half, but then kind of went out of it for a long, long period, and then kind of came back bursting onto it again, and then kind of went out of it again. Now, in saying that, look, he's a talisman, but he certainly needs other guys around him. They're being very, very effective. I think they've got some nice players. Flynn in midfield was excellent, I thought. I thought he had an absolutely savage game. They've got a really good guy in I think it's Sheahan in corner back. Very, very good player. But it was a little bit, I thought the first 45, 50 minutes was a little bit, they needed to probably put a couple of Tyrone lads back on their arse, I thought even for some of the scores that Tyrone got, it was just a bit friendly, shall we say, the tackling. Okay, now near the last 15, 20 minutes, I think they increased the intensity, and you could see that at the start of the second half, they increased the intensity. The lads obviously got into them. But Kildare love as well, kind of similar to well, they're not exactly similar to Donegal, but they love to run with the ball, as you well know, and they love to come off the shoulder. And in Newbridge, they really wanted that. I think, look, they've done very well. They're acquitting themselves excellently, and they were very, very unlucky. I thought they deserved at least a draw out of that game, to be fair, and they were unlucky. But I think there's lots of learnings for them, and they're coming, and they've obviously players to come back. And to be fair to the lads in the management team, they're giving some amount of fellas tryouts, and they're scouring the county. So things are looking bright.
Yeah. We're not going to get too carried away, because obviously the mighty Dubs are waiting for all of us in the long grass. For the first time ever, the grass is growing in Dublin, it seems. Anthony, great to have you with us this morning. Cheers.
All right, Jared. Thanks a lot, Dad.
Anthony Moyles there giving us his thoughts on a couple of games this weekend. And obviously, we'll do power rankings this week, next week.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, okay. It's coming. If you want to influence him, slide into his DMs. He loves that. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, with your best face forward with their new and improved razors. It's 6 minutes past 9 this morning. This weekend at GAA Congress, the Gaelic Players Association have put a motion for equality on the table as they call for the GAA to integrate the three main Gaelic Games bodies. The GPA motion asks that the GAA prioritise integration with the LGFA and the Camogie Association in order to jointly ensure equal investment, recognition and opportunity for all genders to play all sports in the Gaelic Games family. I'm delighted to say the Equality, Diversion and Inclusion Manager, Gemma Begley of the GPA, joins us right now for us to have a chat about this. Gemma, good morning to you. How are you?
Everyone, how's it going?
So what's your instinct about the motion and how much support it's garnering out there from the delegates this weekend?
Yeah, I suppose it's hard to expect anything other than unanimous support. I suppose it's been very positively received, and I suppose it's for many years now everyone has indicated positive intentions towards integration. So I suppose this is really just a prompt towards some action. There's probably enough talking about it at this stage. So it's really what the outcome, I suppose, we're hoping, I suppose, that it's passed fairly unanimously, and it's really what comes after that is the big challenge.
Yeah, well, what does that look like? What comes after?
I suppose what we're really hoping for, and Tom had mentioned it in the statement released last week, it's really a plan, an action plan, something tangible, timelines, a bit of accountability. I suppose at this stage the three NGBs have indicated support for it, but that's probably been going on for 20 years now, I think, since maybe Joe McDonough's group first initially talked about it, and successive presidents over the years have had good intentions, as I say. Even in Tom Ryan's most recent comments in his annual report, it was obviously indicated that there was overwhelming majority of support amongst the membership surveyed. We've had, I suppose, 97% of players have indicated they support this and it's the way forward. So I suppose, how do we translate that now into action? We want, I suppose, that's what we're calling for, is an action plan, a real commitment to it. I suppose something really tangible would be some kind of joint statement from the three NGBs, committing to it and saying, I suppose, that they want to achieve it by a certain date, or that there's possibly a joint committee going to be convened, maybe with an independent chair, something like that, something tangible to move this along, and so that we're finally seeing action on it.
Is there a concern that there's going to be job losses? What are can you tell us what you think are the main barriers here? What has slowed this down?
To be honest with you, I suppose that's one of the challenges. There's just a vacuum of information about where this has been held up, and that's what we're all trying to maybe read between the lines, or to figure these things out ourselves. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, what the barriers have been. Hopefully, I suppose we're nearly moving beyond that point. At this stage, I suppose there's always a perception possibly that maybe LGFA have held that up, and some people would say rightly so. I don't know what what terms and conditions the GAA have sort of put on the table before. We're not privy to that. There's no, I suppose, public consultation on it, if you like. But I suppose that's probably fairly redundant nearly at this point. Sport Ireland have mandated that there's 40% gender representation on boards by the end of 2023. So I suppose whatever issues previously there might have been around makeup or power or constitutions, that it's going to be built until the future of Gaelic Games that there's equal gender representation. So I suppose now is the time to start that. And really the LGFA and Camogie have to be pushing on with this and be fully a part of it. And they will be, essentially. There's no running away from that now.
Do you have any instinct about what the barriers have been? Is it like a barrier that's bubbling up at club level around pitches? Is it as petty as that, or is it actually more about like ownership and property and financial considerations? That's
what I'm saying. Like, we're not, I suppose, exactly sure what's been holding it up, and that's probably why we're bringing it to the table, to see some action on it. Certainly at club level, the fact that there's a one club model there, progressive clubs that do believe in this, it's already happening, if you like, probably to varying degrees. At national level, there has been some very positive collaboration, if you like, across different initiatives, such as the player development pathway. I suppose even the COVID response was very collectivist. But certainly at county level especially, there's still a massive disconnect, if you like, between the male and the female player, and the experiences and recognition of women. But I do think it's probably at national level that we need to see that leadership. There probably hasn't been a clear vision articulated of what one Gaelic Games governing body looks like, and I suppose the positive impact that will have. And maybe that's what we need to suppose push on with, something that the GPA maybe are trying to paint that picture for everyone of just how good it could be.
Well, can you talk to us about that on a practical level? Does this get rid of the fixture issues that we had last week, where the defending champions in the Camogie League didn't know where their game was going to be on the Tuesday of the match that was due to be played on the Saturday or Sunday?
It's probably not going to deal with, it's not going to fix everything. It's not a magic wand, certainly. But you would hope that as far as possible, them sort of the collaborative working and protections will be built in, equal recognition. I would love to see one joint master fixture list at the start of national leagues across all four codes, that the inter-county grounds are named for league games. That's one very simple thing, I suppose, that could be achieved. It doesn't even need integration, but hopefully within an integrated setup, there would be one fixtures committee looking after fixtures across all the codes. And that's, I suppose, where you start seeing the knock-on effects. At a practical level, I suppose you're saying there needs to be a structural review. This can't be just the GAA plus add in some women. It's very much a new governing body. It's probably a chance for a reset within Gaelic Games as to what the most effective structure actually looks like. Obviously, the people involved will have to be involved in that. It's very much a collaborative and consultative process. But I suppose if you were thinking of it in terms of the current structures, are you looking at sort of things like equal gender representation on management committee, equal gender representation at central council level? Would you have joint male and female presidents? Would you have a male and female delegate from every county? Would you have commitments around budgets for things such as coaching and games? Because that's one area at the minute that there's a massive disparity between males and females for young boys and girls.
So maybe that's the stuff that's scaring off the men who are making the decision within the GAA.
Well, that could be a factor, I suppose, but I haven't heard that articulated. I'm not sure how much communication has been internally, I suppose, within the GAA to that effect. That's, I suppose, what we're trying to prompt is that conversation within clubs and counties and provincial level and at national level, and possibly to encourage wider consultation on this. Like, I've had so many good conversations over the last week, and integration means 100 different things to different people. So we probably just want to be clear. I suppose the high level principles for us are around equality of obviously investment, recognition and opportunity. And then I suppose the structures and the process of getting there. That's how we work itself out. And it really does need, I suppose, consultation and a bit of action on it.
Like, it'll be very interesting to see how long it takes before we actually get to that point, because you mentioned there about gender representation on the committees in Croke Park and at national level. You would assume that needs to happen via what's happening at local level, at grassroots level, at county board level, for example, and where the gender representation is there, because it seems that if you look at the county boards around the country, that perhaps they're well behind on that front as well.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. Like, if it's a new Gaelic Games governing body, it's not just going to be GAA structures with the women added in. That's one really key message, I suppose. It has to be an integration of all men and women in Gaelic Games. Probably have to stop thinking within the paradigms of GAA, LGFA and Camogie. And it's basic. I don't know what the ideal structure is. This is I suppose what we're trying to just prompt. Is the ideal structure that there's one county board looking after all 4 codes, and that there's sort of functional subcommittees? So you'll have a fixture subcommittee that looks after all 4 codes, and a rules subcommittee, facilities, whatever else it is, but you're working functionally rather than cross codes. I don't know the answers to that, I suppose, but what we really want is that consultation to start and really like trying to figure out what is the best way forward. And yeah, to your point, I suppose Sport Ireland have mandated by the end of 2023 that it happens at board level. So I suppose the implications of that is it has to start going through the whole at all different levels of the organisation as a spin-off from that, if you like, that it percolates down. So it's certainly going to have to start happening soon. That it's nearly moved beyond, I suppose, whether it's going to happen. It's just how long it's going to take and what it's going to look like. But I suppose also to consider just the most recent example, maybe of Golf Ireland, the 2 associations separately joined up, and that was a process that probably took, was it 5 years, 4 or 5 years? So I suppose that's hopefully as long as it will take. But if it certainly could be done any shorter than that, I suppose that's what we're really trying to achieve. I think everyone's in the shared vision now that this is the way forward. There's probably just a slight push from the GPA, to expedite this process and kind of move it along from now.
Presumably it gets overwhelming support on the floor and it gets voted through, because, I mean, surely nobody's going to vote no to this, are they?
Yeah, well, you would hope it's the right thing to do. And I think even just to sort of take a step back, even the cultural influence and the societal position of the GAA in Ireland, like, it has such a big stamp across all parts of life in Ireland, if you like. It just should be a massive statement to women and girls to say, yeah, we recognise and value you equally. You're 100% valued part of our organisation. I know it's been frequently mentioned before. I suppose the GAA wouldn't be what it is without the sort of organisational power. I think that's to quote Liam O'Neill previously. It wouldn't be with what it is without the organisational power of women and girls that have went before. Even the GAA's own research shows that the audience that watches Gaelic Games is almost 50-50 male and female. So, like, and it is a family and a community organisation. So I would hope there's overwhelming support for this. I think there's a shared vision that it's the way forward. More than happy to have any, I suppose, discussion or anyone that wants to talk about it. We're completely open to that, to see what the view on the ground is from different perspectives. But yeah, we would hope that this will be a starting point for real action.
Well, I hope you're dead right, Gemma. We'll keep a very close eye on it, and we'll certainly very interested to talk about what happens next, and also just keep an eye on it, because it's the type of thing that you can put on a shelf and say, oh yeah, we're going to do this, And then even after it happens, it's like, oh, we've done that now, that box is ticked, away we go. And it's like, oh, that's not really what we're talking about. We want something completely different. So
that's it. And probably just to give the positive side to the players have obviously been through a merger process. Obviously we're a lot smaller and a lot less complicated, and there's a lot less levels, less layers of administration and that. But like, it's been nothing only positivity really since we started that process, and can speak with some degree of understanding and empathy for the different perspectives and viewpoints. But like, it's just, there's so much to be gained from it that can't champion this process enough and really want to drive it on.
No, 100%. Gemma, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Stuff. Thanks, guys.
It's Gemma Begley there, the GPA's Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Manager, and that GPA motion goes to Congress this weekend for equality. We'll keep you updated on Saturday and Sunday shows with Joe, and on Saturday with John Duggan as well. If you want to get in touch, if you have a view on that, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or of course you can always leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. OTB Gold's Colin Gooch Cooper's feature-length retirement interview at 1 o'clock, State of the Union with Keith Wood at 3. The classic is The Brawl. That's your documentary?
It is. Yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah. Sell it there.
You should definitely listen to that documentary. It's called The Brawl, and it's on OTB Sports Radio today at 4 o'clock.
The brawl in question is Meath versus Mayo.
Yeah. The brawl.
The McEnany brawl.
Yeah.
OTB Gold, Joe meets Sherlock Nan at 6, and then tonight the show will be looking back at what happened over the course of the weekend and setting the table for a big week of sport. I mean, that decision next weekend might be the biggest thing that happens in Irish sport this year. We'll see. Up next, Alan Quinlan talking rugby.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Six Nations Show on OTB Sports Radio.
Can you come on and talk about Ireland's attack shape? It's really exciting. I don't remember if we get that call 15 years ago.
It's spinning! It's spinning!
Updates, analysis and opinion across all OTB channels from start to finish.
I've never seen a team like Ireland before.
The Six Nations on OTB. Don't miss a moment of the action. Subscribe to the OTB Rugby podcast feed now.
This is OTB Sports Radio.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance PLC.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
21 minutes past 9 this morning. Alan Quinlan, host of the Red 78 podcast, joins us. Alan, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Ger.
Yeah,
yourself?
The URC at the weekend, a bit off Broadway, but it's an opportunity for those players who are on the fringes of the Ireland squad to remind the selectors and everybody else that, like, they're pushing hard. Was there anything in Munster's performance in their scrappy win that was of note from an Ireland perspective?
Yeah, I think, look, Dave Kilcoyne and Craig Casey played well. It was all 4 games, Ger, were probably... The words to use were hard fought, scrappy. Weather conditions were bad, so there was plenty of mistakes in the four wins for the Irish provinces. But I suppose Munster, it was a must-need win first and foremost. To get the bonus point was important. It put them ahead of Edinburgh. They briefly got into third place until Glasgow played on Saturday. But is there anything that stands out? Well, the man that got the 3 tries in the wing reminded everyone of his ability to finish tries, Simon Zebo. I think.
How close is Zebo to the Ireland squad at the moment?
I don't know.
James Lowe came back obviously at the weekend as well.
Yeah, and James Lowe got a great try for Leinster. Look, I just think we always talk about Simon Zebo and this X factor and this ability to. It's kind of like a striker in soccer, just get goals and. It's just you notice something with Zebo when he gets the ball anywhere within the sniff of a try line or an opportunity. He has incredible acceleration. His weakness, I suppose, and this is something maybe that has hindered him a little bit, is probably the work rate, the aggressiveness, and probably a relentless type of energy that some other wingers bring who are less talented than him. He's incredibly talented. He's good under the high ball, great left boot, and he's a brilliant finisher. I just think that the third try he scored the other night, Munster swept back down the blind side. Ben Healy did really well to fix a defender, but I just had this feeling that if Zebo gets the ball in his hands, he's going to score here. He's just that bit of acceleration to get away. And it's hard to ignore someone who could score 3 tries like that. He hadn't to do a huge amount or anything remarkable, but you just feel if he gets anywhere close to a scoring opportunity, he finishes it. And I just think that, I don't know, I'd love to see him back involved in some way, but look, he obviously needs lots of games, and he's played very little this season.
He's 32.
But you can't discount him.
He's 32 in March, so he'll be 34 by the time the World Cup rolls around. Like, is Robert Balakoon ahead of him at this stage in the selectors' minds, or is there an opportunity for him? Like, you know, if he was to get a run of games and his conditioning improves to a point where it's like, okay, he's going to be able to go for 87, 88, 90 minutes, however long a rugby game is these days at international level, that we could put him in and trust him.
I think so. I think obviously you ask is Robert Balakoon ahead in the selectors' minds? Well, obviously yes, because that's the way the selection went for the Six Nations, the 37-man squad. Mac Hansen's ahead of him, James Lowe's ahead of him, Andrew Conway's ahead of him.
Keith Earls.
Michael Lowry got picked in, Keith Earls. So these guys have been picked. I just think, is there anything he can do? Well, the World Cup is 18 months away, really. So if he's 32 in March, he'll be 33 maybe in September 2023. I just think someone like Simon Zebo, if he just needs to play regularly and obviously kind of really nail down that jersey in Munster and play week after week. I just think if he's fitter and match fitter, he can add to any team, and he has that quality. But it's just about consistency, and it's up to him himself what kind of drive, desire, determination he has to get back into that Irish squad. I'm sure he'd love to be back involved. If he has a good period from now to the end of the season, he may get into Andy Farrell's squad for New Zealand, so they'll probably bring an extended squad there. So all is not lost for him. I just think a couple of glimpses the other night shows that he has something special, and you can't discount that.
Has what we're looking for in a winger changed a little bit over the last little while? Because obviously Mac Hansen comes in, plays so well, pops up as a midfielder at times, and has a versatility that he's showing his skills right across the pitch as the game gets broken down, I guess, throughout the 80 minutes. So are we judging wingers on those terms rather than whether or not they can play well hugging the touchline for their province?
Well, I think it's advantageous, Owen, if you have footballing wingers who do come in off the wing and affect the game on a regular basis. I think Damien Penaud does it so well for France. He just pops up everywhere, and I've always been a fan of wingers coming in off that touchline and being options and pinning down back rows or hunting down the halfbacks and just keeping them honest and stuff like that. So has it changed a little bit? Not, first and foremost, it's like a prop. You have to get your scrum right first, and if wingers can score your tries, you've got to get them the ball. But obviously, when the game opens up a bit, and there's lots of different phases, it does help. I think Simon Zebo is well able to, be a playmaker and be an option like that. Since he's come back from France, like he's only a handful of games played between COVID, injury, and stuff like that. So I think he's well capable of being a footballer like that. But you're right, Hansen, James Lowe have added to the Ireland attack, and I wouldn't say that's an issue that's keeping Simon Zebo out. I just think he needs to be fitter, stronger, and probably show it on a regular basis.
Let's talk about the Italy game. If Sexton is fit, who do you pick at 10?
I don't know, Ger. It's a difficult one because I'd love to say, pick Carberry and let him kind of express himself with less pressure and really build his confidence and resilience. And maybe that's the way to go. But then you don't have Johnny Sexton he hasn't played a game for 4 weeks then when you face England, or over 4 weeks. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. So I don't know. Maybe if Johnny Sexton is fit and he's the captain of the squad, I'm sure he'll probably be arguing that out with Andy Farrell.
But don't we need to see, like, I can't see any case for picking Sexton at 10 against Italy. I can't see any case for picking Sexton at 10 against Italy, and then maybe Carberry plays so well that Sexton is now on the bench, and that's just it. That's what happens. Like, Sexton overtook O'Gara, and then O'Gara re-overtook him at the World Cup. But that's how this works. Like, just because he's captain, we can't be grandfathering him into the team.
No, look, of course not, and maybe there's more benefit in giving Joey Carberry another start. And as I said, there'll be less pressure. It'll still be messy, and there is still pressure, but maybe there is more benefit in starting Joey Carberry and letting him kind of really express himself, as I said, and go for it, and kind of add to what he did in France under extreme pressure against a very, very powerful side. So there probably is. You asked me the question, what would I do? I would be leaning towards that way, but then you want to beat England as well, and I suppose Sexton has gone through periods before where he hasn't played for a long time, and he's seamlessly transitioned back into the side. So there probably is more benefit in starting Joey Carberry.
See, I don't think it's guaranteed that you start Sexton against England either way at this stage. If Carberry plays well against Italy, he's played 2 games in a row, come in, taking the jersey, to drop him at that point because Sexton is captain, I think that's... I guess what I'm saying is I think that what we're witnessing here is the transition to Carberry at 10, Sexton on the bench.
Yeah, if he went out and played brilliantly against Italy, you have that argument, and that's what the Andy Farrell would probably want, because there's been an over-reliance on Conor Murray and Johnny Sexton for years when they were the 9 and 10 and so successful for Ireland. And that was conversations we were having all the time. Who's going to take the jerseys? Who's going to put pressure on them? If one or either of them are injured, it upsets the whole flow of the team. So if he does that, yes, everyone would like to see that, bar Johnny Sexton. But I think, obviously he wants to try and keep going and get to that next World Cup. And he's been brilliant for Ireland. But there is a need for Carberry and Jack Carty and the rest, Ross Moore and Harry Byrne, to step up and kind of make sure that we don't have the same issues when Johnny Sexton doesn't play for Ireland again.
That would be an interesting dynamic as well, you'd imagine. Sexton being on the bench, being the chaser, once again, just like he was 12, 11 years ago. And I guess the way that would drive standards everywhere in camp, with Carberry looking over his shoulder at Sexton if he was to be the starting 10.
Yeah, you don't know what. Look, I think I had this conversation a number of times on one occasion when Johnny and Ronan were trying to, take each other on, and they had that great competition for places. And I remember after an England game, I think it was 2011 or 12, when Ronan didn't get on for the England game. He was on the bench, and he was like someone who had the biggest disappointment of his life. I think he had 124 caps at that stage, or 120 plus caps at that stage, and it just showed the drive and desire of him that he was on the bench, and there was a transition happening, and he just couldn't let himself kind of drop his own standard and allow it to be an easy situation. I'm sure Johnny Sexton he's the exact same. They had that same desire, that fight in them. And if that happened, he wouldn't be pleased. No matter what age he is, no matter what the perception is in the outside. So, and that drives people on around him, as you say, Eoin. That makes people, it puts them on edge and shows that you have to keep that fight going right to the end, and that's what good players do.
Just to kind of like counter what you were saying there, Ger, a moment ago about, this is what happens. You know, the informed player gets a shirt. I know that it happens because Sexton gets injured in the middle of the week between the first couple of games. But who put in the best performances of the first 2 weeks? Because, like, I mean, there's a lot of short-term memory maybe going on here where...
Best ability is availability. Sexton gets injured a lot.
I get that, but Sexton was also excellent the first week. So just even if you just take away that obvious point that you just made there, if you're rating both of these out-halves out of 10 so far in the first couple of weeks, like, who had the better game, Sexton against Wales or Carberry against France?
Well, contextually, right, we killed Wales because their pack was terrible and shorn of all their best players. We came up against the best pack in the world at the moment in France, and what would Sexton have done in the situation? It's not like with like, right?
I know it's not.
So it's a 9 out of 10 performance from Sexton, and it's a 7 out of 10 performance, and you go, therefore, by those metrics, you pick Sexton back because he is. But that's not what happened, is it? Like, it was like contextually, this is against a really good team, this is against a really bad team.
Well, then I guess that's the question then, contextually, like, what was the more impressive performance?
Well, Gerard's given Wales, giving them a bit of mitigation there. I think Ireland were ruthless and at times against Wales, but the different sort of pressure against France. So it is contextually, it's different games. But I just think Johnny Sexton, what he does is better than what Joey Carberry does at the moment. And I think there was 1 or 2 times when I think Sexton's experience and the type of player he is, the way he can really take the physical exchanges, take the ball to the game line, and his execution of pass in that really pressurised situation is world class. And that's what's made him a world class player for a long, long period of time. I think that's where Joey Carberry can get to. I think he's a brilliant footballer. So if you're rating him out of 10 on the performances of both matches, yes, it's different. And a lot of the time it is down to your forward pack and the type of service they give. But again, it's not like for like the 2 games because of the different sort of pressure you're under. But going back to the original point.
One last point on this. There's also the case that it's very unlikely we're going to win the championship now because we lost against the best team, who more than likely are going to win the championship. And so therefore, while the prize money is still hugely important, if the prize is, I know it's not entirely gone, but there's now a bit more wiggle room for us to think long term. And long term, what's the best thing for us? It has to be to get game time for somebody who isn't Sexton, who more than likely won't be this good when the World Cup rolls around, because age remains undefeated in all sports ever.
I just think there's loads of opportunities again for Johnny Sexton. If he doesn't start, I'm just saying if he doesn't start against Italy, I think Ireland can still win the championship. France have got to go to Scotland, they've got to go to Cardiff, and they've got to play England the last one. They've got to be really, really good for three games on the trot. They're probably capable of that, but I said it before the start of the tournament, I didn't think there was going to be a Grand Slam winner. And I think if going into the last weekend, if we're in the mix, and the Irish selectors would be mindful of that as well. And I just think, look, Ireland are a different team with Johnny Sexton in it, and that's the reality. And you want to go to Twickenham. If we go to Twickenham and lose against England, well, then we're looking at a pretty negative 6 nations. What was so promising to start. So, there'll still be plenty of opportunities. I don't think it's a major issue for Joey Carberry if he doesn't start against Italy. He has the France performance in the bank. There's a summer tour to New Zealand. There's going to be November internationals. There's going to be lots more opportunities. I'm not saying it's completely the right thing to do, but I just don't think Johnny Sexton will be too pleased. But it's up to Andy Farrell.
Exactly. Like, unhappy players unhappy at being dropped. I don't care.
But there still will be one eye on that English, that performance that's needed in Twickenham. So look, it's a debate. We'll see later in the week.
Yeah. One last question for you. South Africa joining the Six Nations in 2025, would that be a good thing or a bad thing?
Possibly a good thing, but not removing it. I think Italy needs support, and I think they need removing Italy would destroy them completely. And I know at times you think does there need to be a relegation thing? Possibly, but removing Italy is something that is quite harsh and something that I don't think will happen, obviously, because they're stakeholders themselves. Bringing South Africa into it would offer a different kind of intrigue. Would it damage the Lions tours? Yeah, I think so. I don't know if there's a need to. They've signed up with Sanzar till 2025, which is, 3 years away. They're going to be playing in the Southern Hemisphere. So I don't know. I think it'll be exciting if it did happen, and it would be add a different dimension to the Six Nations, which is already incredibly historic and captures the minds of everyone's year after year. So I don't know. I think in some ways it could damage it, but it's kind of like the South Africans coming into the URC. It adds something a little bit different, which is, some people are resistant to change in life. And I think it could be something that was exciting. But again, we're speculating down the line, and it's all down to money.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's a period of time away. We better mention Connacht, their win at the weekend. I know you've got to go, but they were incredibly impressive in the win over in Scarlets at the weekend. I thought, not having won there since 2004.
They're getting a lot of monkeys off their back over the last 12 months or so. A period of consistency now will be great for them, and obviously they were going to be up against it in the Heineken Cup quarterfinals, but big opportunity for them to remind everybody that actually they have made those quantum leap forward and will be bringing those games live on Off the Ball. Alan, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Cheers, Ed. Thanks.
It's Alan Quinlan there. You can get the Red 78 podcast in the OTB Rugby stream. You can get it wherever you get your podcast as well. Search Red 78. Brown says, Zebo can't be near the Irish team. I love him and I'm a Munster man, but he'll be too old for the World Cup. Just not worth sacrificing younger wingers for him at this stage. I do think that we have a fetish for youth. I mean, I'm just making that point myself. I was about to say,
there's a lot of ageism going on this morning.
But, there's a difference between 33 and 37, isn't there?
Well, I cannot disagree with that fact. No. They are two different numbers, yes.
Yeah, and one is bigger. But look, I don't think he's close to it at the moment. He'd need to get in Six Nations shape, OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Join us tomorrow morning from 7:30. We're talking Champions League, the latest with the Irish women's national team, Six Nations, and we'll bring you Eoin's latest Gaelic football power rankings. Right now we're bringing you more reaction to the weekend sport. Here's Kieran O'Rahillig and Shane Keegan with Joe on the Sunday paper review. Enjoy.
Mayo happy in Croke Park last night. For instance, this back page here is the Mail on Sunday double dose, pointing out that this is 2 wins in a row for Mayo against Dublin. Mayo follow up All-Ireland semi-final win over Dubs as Desi Farrell's men left rooted to the foot of Division 1. A 5-point win for Mayo last night at Croke Park. And just on that theme, because it is all over the back pages, Joe Brolly, for instance, is writing, Kieran, about Mayo and about Dublin, and you picked out this piece. Fallen Stars look like a team who will ply their trade in Division 2 next year. He says in his piece, it's impossible to improve on perfection, but even so, this Dublin team is a disorganised mess. Up front, they have zero teamwork, and as a result, they never looked remotely capable of winning. Dublin, no clear idea of how they wanted to play, quickly degenerated into a team that will be playing in Division 2 next year. And he talks about the various mistakes and the balls kicked away and the lack of a plan. Kieran Kilkenny couldn't win it on his own, and Mayo were enjoying themselves. So you picked out that piece. I'm sure you're as struck by all of us at the speed of the decline, Kieran, at the moment. It's very pointed.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's incredible, and it's all the more amazing given how vociferous people have been for the last few years about how, this is a juggernaut that will never end and split the county in two and blah, blah, blah. And I think the intro, actually, the first paragraph in Joe's piece there was wonderfully done, actually. He said, in Croke Park last night, Brian Fenton, Kieran Kilkenny and Dean Rock bore the expressions of lads who had been transferred without warning from Real Madrid to Wycombe Wanderers. And it's... It kind of makes you think a little bit of Man United fans, Barcelona fans even now as well, in the sense that you think there's something impregnable there that'll never change. It's always going to be this way, and they can just plummet, and it is quite remarkable how quickly this has happened. There were signs last year. I'm not a GAA expert, but watching on from the outside, there were signs last year that things weren't going to work. I think you had a couple of people like I think Malachy Clerkin said it, that Dublin won't win the All-Ireland this year, last season. They fell out, quite handily to Mayo in the semis, and now they've gone, is it 3 in a row they've lost now? So to kind of drop from where they were to this and do it in this speed is remarkable, and I think it'll be very interesting to see exactly how they react.
There's an element, Shane, with the slight slippage we saw last year. They win the All-Ireland initially under Desi, and that's very much the COVID All-Ireland. And then last year we saw slippages, small things, cheap fouls when otherwise they would have worked back diligently and not given away the easy free, or just a certain emphasis on possession and movement. But there were slippages, and so I was thinking of that, how do you go bankrupt? Well, slow at first, and then all of a sudden. And they're in that all of a sudden phase now, like the arse has fallen out of it feels like.
It does feel that way. We could still all be made to look very, very silly. I mean, they have plummeted all the way from favourites to win the All-Ireland to second favourites to win the All-Ireland, so I wouldn't be getting completely carried away yet. No, but at the same time, as somebody who extols the virtues of coaching and management and the effect that it can have on individuals or on a team, I mean, this is a prime example of, as Kieran has just said, there were so many different reasons listed around Dublin's dominance. It now appears that probably the main reason behind Dublin's dominance was Jim Gavin and what he managed to assemble around him, which was not just a superb manager, but a phenomenal management team. And, coming in behind, look, you could argue United are obviously still trying to find Ferguson's replacement, and there's numerous examples of it, but I really didn't relish the job for him when he was coming in there, to be coming in behind somebody who had been just as phenomenal as Jim Gavin had been and had that success. And look, it did look as though all might be fine, as you say, in that first year, but Jim Gavin is arguably right up there as possibly one of the greatest Gaelic football managers of all time, and Desi is not an awful manager. He's just not Jim Gavin. And I realise there's a little bit of player turnover that feeds into it as well, but I do think that is the number one factor in the change that we've seen is his departure from the scene.
I would tend to agree, and that seems to be twofold. One, the culture he set and the standards he set and the personal skill set that he seemed to foster, and then secondly, man, he was obviously an unbelievable innovator when it came to strategy and game plans and how they went about their business. And there are just so many things when you watch Dublin these past couple of weeks that stand out a mile as being reprehensible in the Gavin era. So I was keeping notes, and a minute 35 where Dublin have a free out maybe just past their own 22, and it's Brian Howard on the ball, and he just skies it up in the air, barely makes halfway, and it's a 50-50 ball. And you're thinking, that's just bereft of any thinking, of any plan. I mean, and that's not an attack on Brian Howard. I mean, he's part of a system, but you think under Gavin, that doesn't happen.
But the question there is why. So why did that happen last night, as opposed to why did that never have concentration levels dropped? Has application dropped? Has understanding of the game plan dropped? What do you know? I don't know the answer to those questions. It's just, look, you meet. I do tend to, I suppose, describe it as there's maybe 10% of the population in sport who are better than the rest, okay? But then there's 1% that are just, once in a lifetime kind of people and just irreplaceable, really. And Gavin, for me, absolutely falls into that 1%. I mean, I would absolutely love to see Jim Gavin take over another county. I think that would be fascinating to see. Was this the right man in the right place at the right time, or could he not pull off 5 in a row or whatever, but could he pull off something remarkable with another county, because he is a truly remarkable individual. So I'd love to see that test taken on. We probably won't, we almost certainly won't, but
be a lot of fun.
It would.
Kieran, final word on what you expect from Dublin this year. Will they pull it together at the end?
Well, is Stephen Cluxton coming back? Have we ruled that out?
I think we have.
Ruled it in or out?
I think we finally have ruled it out, yeah.
Probably running a mile.
We might be looking. He might be looking on now and then. But also, I mean, I don't know, Shane, you might have read a book. Oh God, I can't remember the exact name. The Captain something, and it was an argument about whether it was management, players, or a captain that made the greatest teams the greatest teams.
The captain's class, was it?
I think that might be. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, very good.
And he went on to speak about analysing, assessing basketball teams, the great baseball teams, great soccer teams, club and international, New Zealand, and dwelled on the captain as being the big thing. And I'd often, now for the last 20 years, writing about sport, I'd have always thought that the manager. I always go back to Martin O'Neill coming into a team that was 21 points behind Rangers, not as much money, blah, blah, blah. And he turned it around and won a league by 18. And I always thought the manager is the most important person at any club. He can change it in so many ways and instigate such change. But the captain, there's a strong theory that I think what's often overplayed in Irish and British sports, the captain of a rugby team, whatever else, but they can also be so important in the dressing room. And I wonder if the changes that have happened with Dublin as well in that regard might be something more tangible and more important than we thought. Not just Jim. I've no answer for you, basically, Joe. I don't know what's going to happen this year.
No one does.
Isn't it a great feeling, though?
Yeah.
If they lose to Mayo in the final, and I'm speaking as a dub, I'd be delighted just to see Mayo finally get that and not just beat them in a semi or a league game.
Fellas, let's turn to pages 2, 3, 4 and 5 of the Sunday Independent. So 4-page piece, Paul Kimmage, who hasn't had a piece in a couple of weeks, so I suspect he's been working very hard on this, and it's smoke and fire in Irish horse racing, obviously a subject he's been covering a lot over the last couple of years. Smoke and fire, Stephen Mahon. His life in racing has brought him joy, disappointment and vilification. But when he began supplying information on alleged doping of horses to the authorities, he thought he was doing the right thing. So in effect, this is an interview with Stephen Mahon. And this is part 1 of certainly 2, if not 3, I don't know, and probably more beyond this initial series. So Stephen Mahon, a trainer. In effect, it's an interview with him. Brilliant picture of him taking a drag from a cigarette next to a horse box and staring down the camera. And that's how the piece opens. In effect, Stephen Mahon takes a drag on a cigarette, blows smoke through an open window in the kitchen. It's a Sunday morning in late January at his boyhood home in North County Dublin. And 8 months, writes Paul Kimmage, have passed since a Thursday evening in Galway when that's the IHRB, rushed into his yard and knocked him to the floor. An inspection of his yard has resulted in a 4-year ban, since been reduced by 6 months, but a 4-year ban for neglect of horses, in effect, the welfare of horses under his control. So that's the longest ban in history for this kind of offence. And so to quote, for instance, some of the pieces around that time, Skies at the Races. While the Gordon Elliott case was obviously very bad, this case much worse. This case involved actual suffering of horses, with numerous thoroughbreds enduring unnecessary and prolonged pain whilst under the care of a licensed trainer. The details that were published by the IHRB are genuinely upsetting, particularly for those that spend their lives putting so much thought and effort and affection into the caring for every need of the thoroughbreds that they are responsible for. The Irish Times, for instance, say that the photographs taken by the IHRB officials during the course of 2 inspections at Mahon's rented premises in County Galway in April, judged by details in the IHRB report released on Thursday, those photos would make for grisly viewing if publicly available. So over the course of the inspection, one horse was found with a chronic and obvious injury that left it in pain for much longer than should have been the case if proper standards were followed. Officials found another 7 horses inadequately cared for in a field, and one horse had to be put down the day after the inspection due to a catastrophic injury. So that's the initial opening of Paul Kimmage's piece here, and he references those pieces in the paper at the time, and he writes, but here's what the columnist did not address. These horses that had endured unnecessary and prolonged pain had owners. Had any of these owners sought compensation from Mahon, expressed a grievance, lodged a complaint? What if some had actually spoken for Mahon at the hearing? What if they were continuing to pay him training fees? What if the only complaint any of them had made was about Lynn Hillier, the IHRB's chief veterinary officer and head of anti-doping? What kind of column would that make? He doesn't expand upon that, so I don't know how many owners did speak up at Mahon's trial. I don't know if some or none expressed a grievance. This suggests that the owners were quite happy, but I've no explanation as to what exactly we mean. I mean, it's not laid out in a clear and factual way. It's just suggesting there's something there which is suggesting that the owners hadn't sought compensation or expressed a grievance. But again, we're talking about up to 11 owners here, probably just fewer than 11 horses. So I don't quite know what that's in reference to, but certainly the point is made that had any of these owners sought compensation from Mahon, ? Expressed a grievance, ? Lodged a complaint, ? They're rhetorical questions. They suggest, I don't know what you're reading that is, Shane. It suggests no, but I don't know exactly what the owners did feel about the situation.
Well, I suppose from my point of view, to speak as the piece about the piece overall as a whole, okay, I wouldn't be a big horse racing guy, and to be honest with you, the drugs and sport thing is not something that tends to drag me in as a narrative either, to be honest with you. If this wasn't a Paul Kimmage piece, which I pretty much will read anything that Paul writes, if this wasn't a Paul Kimmage piece, I don't think I would have actually read it. It's not the kind of thing I would be drawn to. Sure. And yet, you do sit down, you do read it, and I personally anyway was completely and utterly captivated by it and drawn in by it. And I feel like when you finish what's the one going on at the moment, Pam and Tommy, and you have to wait a week before the next episode is out. I want to read the rest of this immediately, and I'm almost annoyed that I have to wait another week to read the rest of it. But not that there's holes, but definitely the bit that I'm confused by the bit that you've quoted there, because I'm following it all along, and you're reading, as you've said, the different pieces that the Irish Times have said about the case, and Skies at the Races have said. And then you read the piece you've just highlighted there, and so what is he saying to me? Is he saying that there's some falsehood in some of this, or is he saying to me that, well, did he do these things or did he not do these things? Or is it fine that he did these things because the owners didn't have a problem with him doing those things? I was a little bit confused by that piece, certainly. Yeah. And as I say, look, I'm coming at this very naively. I'm far from an expert in it, but I think most people would be in a similar-ish shoes to myself,
I think so. Like, I don't know, is that a well-known issue about the owners or not? I've Googled, I haven't seen anything obvious. But look, this is part one of two, so maybe that he returns to that. I'll just press on for a second, Kieran, and just try and give I think you need to read this piece, is the general point I would make. We can only sum it up so much. Then the piece progresses to a bit about Mahan on his background and a difficult childhood and his efforts to make it as a jockey, which didn't quite work out. And then he fell into training, and he remembers buying his first horse for an owner for 30 grand from Jim Bulger, and Jim Bulger was very, very good to him. And Bulger obviously has really got the ball rolling on this issue by speaking out very strongly to various publications. And he bought the horse from Jim Bulger. Bulger was looking for 40. He had 30 to spend from the owner, and Bulger made a deal with him. I'll take the 30,000 when he wins his first race. You give me 5,000, and when he wins the second, I'll pay you the other 5. And Bulger kept in touch with him, and that's how the relationship started, says Mahan. He was teaching me how to train. Bulger would check in, and you're doing this, and you should run him that day because the ground will dry, and he'd better on that ground, he'll win. And that seemed to be a very good relationship that has survived. So here's where we get to the really damning testimony when it comes to where horse racing potentially is. So he's racing and as a trainer, and he's struggling. By the summer of 2020, he hadn't had a winner since the summer before. And he says, I couldn't understand it. I'd be going to races saying, have a few bob on this horse, he's flying. And I'd be driving home saying, what the F is going on? How did I get it all so wrong? Then he got a call from an old friend who'd been a small-time trainer until the game got too tough. For the purposes of this article, his name is John Doe. So John Doe is the friend. Stephen Mahan is being interviewed here, the trainer. I'm 39 years in racing, Mahan says, and there's probably no yard in the country, England or Ireland, that I wouldn't know someone. So John Doe, writes Paul Kimmage, gave up his licence. He took a job in a prominent Irish yard run by Trainer X. So Trainer X, John Doe works for Trainer X. John Doe called Stephen Mahan. He called me one night, and now I'm struggling. It's not the horses, John Doe said. It's what you're running against. I said, what do you mean? He said, you want to see the shit the horses are getting in Trainer X's yard. They come in the back gate as pigeons. They go out to the races as ostriches. So everybody talks in racing, writes Paul Kimmage. It was John Doe who talked to Mahan about everything he'd seen. It was Mahan who talked to Bulger about everything he'd been told about Trainer X. It was Bulger who talked to Mahan about the best way to proceed, and it was Mahan who picked up the baton and talked to Lynn Hillier. Lynn Hillier is the Chief Veterinary Officer at the Irish Horse Racing Ireland offices. And he says of Lynn Hillier, she wanted to know it all. She felt like my best friend. So on we go, and the piece documents Mahan feeding information to Lynn Hillier and expanding on what John Doe told him about the situation. So Stephen Mahan first started talking with Lynn Hillier in July 2020, and they met up subsequently, he thinks, at race in Kilbeggan. So here's another point from John Doe about the doping world. So he's talking about a certain substance, a corticosteroid. It's used like salt here. They're so effing cute. They have everything covered. How? Asks Stephen Mann. They ship the horse down to me in the pre-training yard. I feed him with this and inject him with that. Lynn Hillier arrives. Where's the horse? Well, he's in the pre-training yard. Why is he down there? Oh, he's a lung infection. She goes to the medical book. The vet has logged him as being on medication. Book closed. They juice him for 3 weeks and leave him a week for the stuff to clear. And then he goes back to the training yard. I'm telling you, man, it's effing unreal. But this is Trainer X, sailing close to the wind. What do you mean? He had a winner last week. He didn't want to run him. He was on the powder and hadn't come down, but he was under pressure from the owner and didn't think he'd win. He pissed in. So now Jim Bulger's interested, writes Paul Kimmage, and the conversations continue with Lynn Hillier, and Stephen Mann is feeding information. And then, writes Paul Kimmage, something extraordinary happened. It was a Friday afternoon. John Doe had just finished at Trainer X's when an order came down to move some horses from the yard. Where do you want them moved to? To blank. We're not being told where they're moved to in the piece, I presume for legal reasons, but moved to somewhere. Why do you want them moved? It doesn't matter. Then a list was drawn up, supposedly, and the horses on it were shipped out. 20 minutes later, there was a second order. All medications were to be removed from the barns to be collected by an assistant trainer. The following morning, 2 inspectors from the IHRB arrived. They were expected. So there was a clear out of horses and medication the morning before the IHRB arrived for an inspection. And that's when Mahon texts Lynn Hillier, they are a step ahead of you. Hillier, thanks. Speak tomorrow if you have time. Man, that's no problem, Lynn. Now, Paul Kimmage says the Sunday Independent made several unsuccessful efforts to contact Lynn Hillier last week. They got a statement talking about prearranged inspections to a change of training premises, which is standard procedure. That doesn't clear very much, but he couldn't get an interview or words from Lynn Hillier about these accusations or this information. In October 2020, Jim Bulger, obviously in conversation here with Stephen Mann, decided to go public with his concerns about a lack of policing in racing. So we'll park me detailing the piece for a moment. These are extraordinary claims. I don't think they'll utterly shock anyone either. It's fair to say, Shane, I mean, if there is a sense that there is an issue in this sport, and who knows how far it goes back, but I presume...
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.